Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by recognizing the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the Mississauga-Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga. The Council of the Municipality of Brighton respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga nations are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. The municipality also continues to fly the flag of the Ukraine at the Municipal Center as an expression of the community's solidarity with the Ukrainian people. As part of that solidarity and as a welcoming and inclusive community, I highlight our unwavering support for the Ukraine, the Ukrainian people, and for democratically elected sovereign governments around the world. Brighton, our council, and our citizens are deeply concerned about the humanitarian toll the invasion will take on the Ukraine and its citizens. We'll begin our meeting with a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, second by Councillor LeBlanc, that Council approve the May 2nd, 2022 Council agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
I was going to request a motion when I look at the closed session, if that can be moved to open, with the exception of 1B. I don't see why most of that, with that exception, can't be discussed in open.
Deputy Mayor, as the mover, this would be a friendly amendment at the moment anyway.
No, I trust when staff asks for something to be discussed in closed, it's because we'll be talking about people in general or people in particular possibly. So I would rather just see us keep it enclosed, and any information that needs to come out can come out.
Thank you for that. The mover is not willing to make an amendment. Would you like to put an amendment on the floor, Councillor Bateman?
Yes, please.
I've written the motion that Council amend the agenda to have the closed session report with the exception of item 1B move to the open session. Does that reflect your comments, Councillor Bateman?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that Council amend the agenda to have the closed session report with the exception of item 1B move to the open session. Is there any discussion? Deputy Mayor Connect.
There are other items that name particular people as well. So I just don't think it's a good idea. There's names throughout this. So
Keeping in mind, if we do this, the whole report does become part of the open session, regardless of what we. Councillor Tadman.
As we were reminded last week, certain people on this council in their platforms when they ran for council professed that they wanted accountability and transparency. And so for that reason, I would support this. And if there's names, the residents have every right to know who's working for them. So I don't see where that would be a problem. And I certainly believe that all of council will respect each position. So I will stick by this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's defeated.
Mayor, did you vote against it then?
I did.
I didn't see your hand go up.
It doesn't have to. We return to the original motion that council approved the May 2nd, 2022 council agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. Councillor Tadman?
Thank you again, Mayor. I just, you didn't give me a chance to call a recorded vote since I didn't see your hand up, and it definitely was a tie until that happened. But anyways, we'll move on with the pecuniary interest that I have declared before about the short-term rental accommodations. So 9.5 is discussing the tax, and also 10.2 motion mentions them there. So I will declare for 9.5 and 10.2.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of pecuniary interest? I have a pecuniary interest on motion item 10.1 as I am an employee of Maracle Incorporated. I make this declaration having sought the advice of the Integrity Commissioner. I am an employee of Maracle Incorporated, the publisher of the Brighton Beacon. Although the Brighton Beacon does not have a contract with the municipality of Brighton, the municipality does from time to time make use of its advertising services, as it does with other publishers, and to that extent, I am declaring an indirect pecuniary interest in the matter. I will turn the chair over to the Deputy Mayor when that item comes to the agenda. Anyone else? Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor Bateman.
Just a follow-up to the Sens game that we took part in for the Chuck-a-Puck. Thank you to everybody that came out, and a special thank you to both the fire chief and the deputy fire chief, because you made the trip twice, got all the way there, and then had to return for a fire call. So thank you. And when I talked to the Sens today, it was $3,000 raised. So great job by everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. And thank you for organizing that. It was a good event, and thanks for the team who all came out and helped out. It was a good event. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Emily Rowley and Councillor Bateman didn't attend the Codrington Community Association, and they asked me to attend. I found it very, very, very interesting in what they're doing. And one of the things that they're looking to bring back is the old Cathy McCann newsletter. And while I was there, they have everything in it, and it was a newsletter that you put together, and they're going to start putting it together again. But at that meeting, they said that they were only going to print 400 for Codrington. So one of the things I said, I would bring it up to the council and as a news thing, and I brought it up to Mr. Hagerman, who's there today, and I gave him their website so they can join it with the municipality, their Facebook page. Is they want to do this, and the cost of 400 is like $100 and some odd dollars, and that's to mail them out at 17 cents, whatever they do, the mail or the flyer. My thing was, why don't they give it to the entire rural community and stuff, because it's an event of everything. They told it, and to bring more people to the hall. I think it's a good thing that they're starting this. So I said I would bring it up to council and make the councillors, everybody aware of it, that this is going to be starting it up again.
Good.
So I gave it to Hagerman to see if we could support it somehow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other announcements this evening? Councillor Anderson.
Oh, just to remind everybody that yesterday, and probably today too, because it's Monday, was Doctor's Day. So I appreciate your doctor, appreciate any doctor that's working in our area right now. I know there was a lot of good comments passed around, and just remember they're important people too. So they have families and they work hard. So thank them.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Rowley.
Well, Councillor Anderson, you reminded me, Smithfield is now decorated with wonderful flags as well. So I think the public needs to recognize the hard work that the Brian Todd Community Fund, along with the DBIA and municipal staff, have worked hard to kind of hang the flags again in downtown Brighton and obviously in Smithfield as well. But kudos to those involved, and great work by the school kids.
Yeah, the students of the community did a good job getting those images up there. So congratulations to everyone involved in that. Any other announcements this evening? We'll move on to the adoption of the minutes, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Connect. The council adopt the April 25th, 2022 council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. We move into I guess we don't need it's a public meeting, not really a statutory public meeting, so we don't need a motion to move into the public meeting, I imagine. So the public meeting is with regard to the naming assets, King Edward Park Community Center, Community Hall, as the Owen Gibb Community Hall. And Madam Clerk, do we have anyone joining us by Zoom for that purpose? No? Is there anyone in the gallery who wishes to speak to the renaming of this asset? There are none noted. So the motion before me reads, it's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Mayor Ostrander, that council receive all comments from the statutory public meeting, May 2, 2022, regarding the naming of the King Edward Park Community Center Hall as the Owen Gibb Community Hall. Do we really need to pass this motion since we didn't hear any? Will a staff report will come forward in this meeting, and we'll deal with it then. Okay. So Councillor Rowley, I'm withdrawing the motion. There were no comments made, so thank you. But you're a member of council, not the public, but you can make a comment. You make a comment when the report comes up too, if you prefer. Yeah. So it takes us to delegations. Our first delegation is from Chief Paul Coburg Police Service Chief Paul Vandergraaf and Carol Beaucamp, Executive Director of Rebound, with regard to the Ride for Rebound Day, May 28th, 2022. Chief Vandergraaf, Ms. Beauchamp.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Members of Council, it's my pleasure to get our deputation commenced this evening. I would appreciate Council's time. Obviously, you have a busy agenda ahead of you. In Carol Beauchamp's absence, we're in great hands with Gavin Hinton. And Gavin will kick off a bit of a background of what Rebound is before I start specifically talking about the ride and what we're hoping Council can do for us. Gavin, over to you.
Good evening, and thank you for providing Rebound with the opportunity to share more about the organization and this very exciting initiative that is coming forward in May 28th, 2022. Rebound is a not-for-profit charitable organization that specializes in helping children, youth, and families reach their full potential. And we do this through a continuum of services where on the lower end, there's more accessible services such as tutoring, guitar lessons. On the higher end, there's more intensive services such as one-to-one counseling and family intervention support. And Rebound Child and Youth Services works to identify service gaps within Northumberland County and then provide services for families and children specifically that help to address those. And one of those is through funding dollars and through donations, we're able to provide the family checkup program that is new to this community and this county. And this is done in collaboration with the University of McMaster University and the Offord Center for Child Studies, as well as the McMaster Children's Hospital. So that's an example of how Rebound is able to quickly pivot with dollars from donors and funders to seek out opportunities where families and children and youth can reach their full potential. So the Ride for Rebound is an opportunity where we can achieve those funds and to engage our community to teach them about opportunities where families and children are in need for support and where it might not be talked about as frequently. And so some quick statistics to show how this is functioning and how it's growing in our community is that 1,500 clients are served by Rebound each year. 200 are engaged each week at Rebound, and 300 families specifically are directly engaged with our family supportive services. And through the Ride for Rebound, we're able to continue and grow these numbers, as well as grow awareness for the programs, awareness for the needs, and to engage people who might not be interacting with Rebound on a client or donor basis. Through COVID-19, we've had the opportunity to pivot from strictly in-person services to virtual services, and that's supported children and youth by overcoming the barriers of geography and different geographical spaces that might not be as accessible without virtual services. So for example, 57% of clients live within Coburg, and that's where our office is. So that's very convenient for those 47% of our clients. However, 53% are outside of Coburg across Northumberland and rural communities. So by providing the opportunity to pivot quickly during COVID-19, we now see an opportunity to extend that past the COVID-19 pandemic into a daily practice by providing virtual services where now children and youth can have accessible programs all the time. So I will pass the table to Chief Vandegraff as he explains Ride for Rebound, this great initiative that he brought forth, and how we're going to bring this forward for a second annual year.
Thanks very much, Gavin. So last year, like everybody, the impacts of COVID were felt on all of us, all of you as parents or grandparents, as employees or employers, but no different for myself as chief of police, in that I have the privilege of having two very strong families, my family personally home and also my work family. And I could see the impact that everything was having on it. Specifically, the youth-related calls for service for us in Coburg went exceptionally high. So I thought this was a crazy opportunity for me to ride throughout Northumberland County. Being a newer rider last year, I chickened out and didn't start from my home here in Brighton, but I actually started in Campbellford, and we rode to Port Hope and ended up in Coburg. So this year we thought, what the heck, we're going to do it a little bit better. So we're going to start right here at the OPP detachment in Brighton, ride to Campbellford and across the similar route. The intent is, sure, we're going to raise a few funds, and I appreciate Fire Chief Thompson for kicking off from Brighton and giving me some money. So I appreciate his efforts there. And the idea is, yeah, we're going to raise a few bucks, but more importantly, throughout these stops, we're going to hear about some real important stories of how a positive impact Rebound has on youth across Northumberland County. I'm just leveraging my position as chief of police to try to draw some awareness to a great organization. You wonder, okay, well, why is the police guy so involved in youth services and Rebound? Well, it's really clear. The correlation between increased illiteracy rates and lower self-esteem among preteens and teens has a direct correlation to crime. So the best crime prevention model we can have is to ensure our youth, our family, our kids, our young families are all in a position to gain success. We've all, every one of us has at a time needed a hand up. Rebound is that building full of hands that really helps young families or young people get the assistance they need. And it doesn't mean it's from Coburg, it's actually countywide. So the miles I'll put on the bike one more time is really small in comparison to the journey that many of the youth in our county go through in becoming stronger adults, and less opportunities for the intersection with the criminal justice system. So our end game here today is we've told you a little bit what Rebound is. I really encourage you to go to the Rebound's website, learn all the details of different programmings. Maybe you can volunteer sometime, maybe you can get involved. If you want to pitch in and ride, I'm more than happy to include you in the ridership. You can do small segments, or we're kind of in Brighton, so you're in for the haul. And or financial donations that support any of the riders that are particularly doing this ride and drawing this great attention. The final ask is that we would ask the municipality to dedicate May 28th as Ride for Rebound Day. And we'll get some details about our start time from the OPP detachment, and maybe we'll see somebody send us off on our journey on May 28th. Gavin, I think I covered it, right?
Sure
Perfect.
did.
I got the nod. Perfect. That, Your Worship and Council, I appreciate again the time. And unless there's any questions, we'll allow you to get back to the business at hand for the municipality.
Well, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Gavin. I know Rebound has been involved with youth in Brighton and across Northumberland County and helping some young people stay out of a system that sometimes is difficult to get out of once you're in it. So we appreciate the work that Rebound does. We appreciate the work you and your officers do in Coburg, of course, the officers here as well, Chief. And if it's at all possible, I look forward to seeing you on May 28th at the OPP detachment, at least. Probably not on a bike, though. Doubt that too. So thank you, gentlemen, very much. And with that, I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council receive the delegation from Chief Paul Vandegraff, Coburg Police, and Gavin Hinton, Executive Director, Rebound, regarding Ride for Rebound Day, May 28th, 2020, 2. And for the mover and seconder's information, I have removed Carol's name and put in Gavin's name for that. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowling.
Maybe some clarification. These kind of programs always require money. And I know that here in Brighton, we have a youth initiative fund. I'm not sure if this is the proper time to ask or if I need to make a motion later on, Mayor, but I was wondering if council can consider supporting a program like this before tonight's over.
At some point, we'll have to have a motion come forward to proclaim May 28th Ride
Right.
for Rebound Day, or if that's what we want to do, that was certainly the request through the delegation. I don't think there's correspondence on the agenda asking for that. So perhaps we can talk about what that looks like and add to that motion
Right.
a donation through the Youth Initiative Fund.
Right. I know, I believe that our finance director is here somewhere on the phone. Maybe she could, at some point, we don't need it right now, Linda, but maybe you could give us an idea of what we have in that fund still, that reserve fund or whatever it is.
I'm not sure if you heard that, Director Whitfield, but the question is how much is in the Youth Initiative Fund at the moment?
I will do my best to try to find that.
Thank you. And you could provide that to members of council by email if that's easier, so that we can know more as we move forward with a second motion coming forward. We'll talk about that too offline. Anything further on the motion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Our next delegation comes from Sean Ogilvy, Manager Government Relations, Forbes Brothers Limited, on behalf of ExploreNet. Mr. Ogilvy? He has unmuted himself, so we're halfway there. You there, Sean?
Hello?
There you are. We can hear you,
Hi.
Sean.
I apologize. I had to switch my microphone to a different setting.
Yeah, I've been there. It's okay.
I'm sure. So let me just share my screen here. The next technical challenge. Got it. So hopefully that shows up, and it'll just give us a little context as I go through this. I'll try to go quickly here. Thank you very much for hearing me this evening. As the introduction said, my name is Sean Ogilvy, and I'm here on behalf of ExploreNet Communications regarding a proposed broadband tower in the township. I'm sure most of you are familiar with ExploreNet by this point. I'm sure you've seen some other tower applications, possibly some fiber projects on the radar recently. But as a quick recap, they're one of Canada's leading broadband service providers. They provide a range of broadband services through a hybrid network. So that uses in-ground fiber optic cables, fixed wireless sites like the one we're talking about today, and a satellite network. And it is their mission to make robust broadband available to every Canadian home and business. For a little bit of context, the site I'm referring to today is the broadband tower proposal known on our end as ON 7953. And it is the subject of site plan application file SP01-2021. And it's proposed to be located in the southwest corner of 33 Grosjean Road, which is sort of just north of the Grosjean Road and County Road 41 intersection. This is just an aerial photograph of the property with the approximate boundaries and tower location. Before we get into sort of the delegation's purpose, I just want to touch on why this has been proposed. And the main reason, of course, is to improve broadband services for the community. I'm sure at this stage of 2 years into a pandemic, no one's disputing the convenience of internet services or our reliance on these services, especially those who have limited access. All levels of Canadian government, federal, provincial, and regional municipal are developing and supporting policies to improve access to broadband services. And despite the essential nature of rural broadband networks, many rural areas lack adequate infrastructure. So this tower proposal, along with many other infrastructure locations across Ontario, are one remedy to this problem. So the purpose of the infrastructure, of course, is to improve broadband services, but the purpose of this delegation is to request that council reconsider one of the conditions that was added to the site plan approval, SP01 2021. Specifically, council or perhaps staff added the condition that if required, the owner of the subject property would transfer strips of land to the municipality and to the county along both Grosjean Road and County Road 41 frontages to ensure that minimum road widths and a site triangle at the intersection of these roads could be maintained or secured. So we're asking that council remove this condition and agree to the approval of the site plan application without it. So a little bit of the reasoning of why we're asking this, not necessarily limited to just these things, but these are sort of the big ones in our mind. It has the potential to limit current and future broadband infrastructure. So there are, I believe, a number of roads that currently do not meet the minimum standards. And if a broadband or similar infrastructure proposal triggers this requirement to voluntarily give up portions of private land, even in the event where there are no specific plans for roadway improvements, landowners might become opposed to having them on their property. So that makes picking new locations more difficult. Adding to this complication is that it can delay the deployment of infrastructure as it requires additional negotiations with landowners, possibly seeking legal advice, and of course, additional costs and scheduling of land surveyors. Less of a concern from a deployment perspective, but worth noting, is that this condition, and in fact, the site plan agreement in total, is not legislatively applicable to this situation. So telecommunications and its associated infrastructure in Canada is exclusively regulated by the federal government under the Radio Communications Act. There are federally regulated consultation procedures, which is why we consult with the municipality and the public, but the Planning Act, Municipal Act, and local bylaws, including site plan control, are not applicable to federally regulated infrastructure. And this condition is being imposed under the Planning Act. Further, sort of on that front, we have been in consultation with the municipality and the public, and we have taken action on certain comments and concerns that were raised to us about the design and location of the infrastructure. But this land transfer condition is not material to the placement or design of the facility. The tower location design do not adversely impact the road standards. Xplornet and the municipality would both be parties to the site plan agreement, but the condition requires the landowner donate the lands in question. Since Xplornet is not the landowner, it cannot consent to this condition. And of course, they cannot enforce that the landowner agreed to this condition either. Finally, the municipality and county have other means available to ensure minimum road standards are met and maintained. So lands could be purchased, they could be expropriated, and of course, future developments that are actually subject to site plan control might bring up the requirement for a similar land transfer. So to wrap this up, Xplornet is bringing additional infrastructure to the municipality to improve broadband coverage for the community. And we have completed the consultation process and addressed the material comments and concerns pertaining to the location and design of the facility. Although it is not a requirement, Xplornet is willing to voluntarily satisfy the site plan agreement and remaining conditions if council will consider removing the land transfer condition. And that's all we have on that. So thank you very much for your time and your consideration of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Ogilvy. I'll open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification on your delegation. Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Chair. I think I saw Mr. Walsh was there. If this is a project of infrastructure coming to us, to the municipality, they don't own the land, who requested that we basically widen the roads and that the landowner give land up?
This is a fairly typical condition on any severance that we see, but I'll ask Mr. Walsh to comment. Mr. Ogilvy, would you stop sharing your screen so that we can see everyone with us? Thank you.
Yes, for sure.
Director Walsh?
Sure. Through the mayor to council, site plan control is a mechanism under section 41 of the Planning Act. And within that set of provisions in the Act, the need for road widening or adequacy of the serving highways is a standard requirement. As the mayor has pointed out, it is a fairly standard thing. And so that provision was made standard. There is fairly extensive road frontage on Grosjean Road as well as Cannon Road 41. It's noted that the widening on Grosjean Road north of the subject land was conveyed at the time of the severance, and the road widening was significant. The road widening comes about because the original time that the Crown laid down the road fabric, oftentimes the road wasn't constructed perfectly centerline to that allowance. So when we now have higher demands for vehicles at the speeds that they travel, et cetera, the platform widths are wider and more shoulders are needed. So that whole road allowance width is needed. And so it's important to get road widening to make sure that we have that in the future. The site plan control agreement would be with the landowner, it's not with Xplornet. So Xplornet and the owner will have to come to some arrangement and fulfilling that condition under the site plan approval, if not varied by council. And there are maybe some other options to address that as well, that maybe staff can follow up with a report in response to the delegation that we've just heard. But there is a statutory basis. Yes, it is a federal piece of infrastructure, but my understanding is the federal guidelines direct proponents to adhere to local regulations. And I think that's why they've entertained this approval to date, because that's the direction that the federal body gives. So the landowner is controlled by virtue of the agreement with Xplornet. There is a statutory basis for it, and there is a practical need for it. But staff can follow up with further discussions with Xplornet and report back to council as soon as May 9th. I think we have a report started on that already.
I do see in parentheses under the motion that it says the application is coming forward next week. So we would look to you to have those discussions with Xplornet and the property owner, if you would, Director.
Will do.
Thank you. Follow up?
Yes. So what is the width with the road allowance now on both roads, 41 and the other road?
Do you know the answer to that, Director?
And not offhand, the original laid out width, usually it's about 66, but it varies. We have some that are around 50 feet as well in the municipality, depending on where you are. I haven't looked to see what this is exactly, and it doesn't really turn too much on that so much as where that physical road occupies that road allowance now. It may sound strange, but as roads get improved over time, they do tend to migrate as more grading is done and things shift around. So it's more important about where the relative location of the physical road is in relation to the limits of the road allowance. I do note that segment of the Grosjean Road doesn't have any ditching and things like that presently. Not that there's any immediate demand for it either, but over the long term, as roads get improved through our capital works program, they would ultimately be constructed to provincial standards for local roads in this case.
Director Walsh, I think you're too far away from your microphone, or something is happening that's causing you to fade away.
Okay, I think I was putting maybe my hands in front of the mic a bit. Is that a little bit better?
Moderately. You're still a little more muffled than we're used to hearing you.
Okay, the technology, the quality isn't quite there for me. Just to answer the question more succinctly, perhaps what's really important is the physical location of the road in relation to the current limits of the right-of-way width. So the surveyor would have to determine that. So I'm sure what's happening here, perhaps with the landowners, that they're concerned about the cost of the survey. And because there is a lot of frontage involved there. So
Director, will you be able to speak to this on the 9th of May?
yes,
And bring forward any communications, relay to us any communications you have both with ExploreNet and with the landowner in this regard on that, at that meeting as well?
yes, most certainly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And in that report on May 9th, can you also include what concerns that we should consider if we do decide to go down this road, what they may be? That makes sense.
Will do.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman?
Thank you. I just want to confirm, when this comes back at the next meeting by Mr. Walsh, would the landowner be notified and given the opportunity to speak to it? Because both, the property we're talking about facing both roads is one owner.
So I spoke to Mr. Grosjean today, and I told him that tonight we would be having this conversation. And through this conversation, I've asked the director to speak to Mr. Grosjean. I told Mr. Grosjean I would be asking the director to do that. So we look forward to those conversations and hearing what comes of those as well. Councillor Anderson.
Are there any other neighbors or anybody making any comment about the tower?
I think we'd hear that next week when the report comes forward.
Sorry, excuse me. I don't mean to interrupt here. I don't see my hand raising function, so I apologize if I'm out of order here a little bit. But I was hoping to clarify two things, or a couple of points here. So one, through your worship, Mr. Walsh, you mentioned the agreement was with the landowner, but the copy of the agreement we were previously given is with ExploreNet and the municipality, not the owner. Same as the recent agreement we received signed back between Freedom Mobile, very similar agreement, was between the municipality and the carrier, not the landowner. And then in terms of public consultation, I was under the impression that all this had already been discussed back in February 14th, 2022, is where we came up with these comments the first time around.
So Director, we'll get you to speak to that at the May 9th meeting, please.
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you. Mr. Ogilvy, you're welcome to chime in to the May 9th meeting as well, to hear what's said at that meeting. Councillor LeBlanc, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I talked with the landowner and gave a phone call to the county. They want a 100-foot road allowance. And like the director said, that twinning the road, when are we going to twin Old Willer Road and have 4 lanes? That's what they're looking for.
It's not Old Willer Road. It's County Road 41.
I call it Old Willer. County Road 41. I don't know when we're going to twin it and make it 4 lanes. So those are the things.
Those I know that those plans aren't on the books today. So that's all I can say to that. Anything further for clarification purposes? I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Mr. Ogilvy.
Sorry, I had one more question. If ExploreNet or Forbes Brothers, on behalf of ExploreNet, are we going to receive a copy of this report in advance of the May 9th meeting?
That's a question you could ask Director Walsh. Director Walsh, I'm sure you'll be in touch with Mr. Ogilvy in the coming days.
Yes, that's correct. Normally a full report isn't shared. The essence of the report is shared so that we can have some good communication and understanding going forward. But usually the full report is property of council, and that's not really shared until it's in council's hands.
But you will be having dialogue with Mr. Ogilvy.
That's correct.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives a delegation from Sean Ogilvy, Manager of Government Relations, Forbes Brothers Limited, on behalf of ExploreNet regarding site plan application agreement conditions recommended for application SP01 2021. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Ogilvy, for your delegation this evening, and I hope that you and Director Walsh have fruitful discussions in advance of our May 9th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next delegation is CAO Jennifer Moore and Director of Finance Glenn Dees from Northumberland County with regard to the county budget presentation. CAO Director, welcome to Brighton virtually.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Ostrander. We're glad to be here. Once again, we do make this trip, be it virtual or in real life. We come out once a year. And I'm not sure if the clerk will be showing the presentation or if you'd prefer us to share it. I believe it was sent through. Either way, we can speak to that. I know.
The answer is if you're able to share it, that's the preference from our side.
Okay, Glenn will cue that up. But in the interest of time, I will start with the presentation. So as I mentioned, this is the annual presentation that we do. So once again, we are touring each member municipality, and on the presentation outline, you can see that it's the standard outline that we have each year. We'll just flip it one slide there. Thanks, Glenn. So we'll start with a bit of a look back at 2021, what we're working on for some key projects for 2022, and then I'll turn it over to Glenn and he will touch on some of the highlights for the budget this year. I'll just go through this slide very quickly. It's just a reminder of the county's mission and vision, where we talk about bringing together people, partnerships, and possibilities for a strong and vibrant Northumberland County. And you can see each of our 4 main priorities, and that's how we will organize the presentation for this evening, like we do each year. First off, I'll start by talking a little bit about our COVID response. And we're still very much being impacted by COVID. Hopefully, we're coming out the other side. But we did have a lot of things happen through 2021. And I'd like to take a few minutes just to talk a bit about some of the key initiatives that the county staff took on and how we were able to respond to the needs of the community. So a few of them are highlighted on this slide. There is, of course, the Northumberland Eats program. This was largely funded by the Social Services Relief Funding through the province. It was a new program looking at an alternate means of helping with food insecurity for our residents. It was in addition to the food banks that already exist. This is a vouchering program where individuals can use those vouchers to purchase either purchased food that they can make themselves through participating vendors that sell foods, or restaurants that sell prepared foods, and either one, depending on participating businesses throughout the county. And this was very well received. And in fact, this program is going to continue on a permanent basis through the United Way. The Social Services Department also did a fair bit of work around children's services, as they had to administer 2 rounds of emergency childcare through shutdowns in 2021. The digital literacy program was a highlight, again, when we look at some of the response to help community members, to help them in this case get the skills that they needed to have more virtual interactions, especially for those that are not accustomed to working online. The Golden Plough Lodge was a top priority when we look at our infection and prevention controls. It's been a tough couple of years. We do have very close to 100% vaccination rates in the home, and we've seen our residents remain safe. We unfortunately did have an outbreak at one point recently, but we were able to get through that, and through the hard work of staff, we kept our residents safe. And now we're starting to see the return to normal that's very much been anticipated by residents and their families. The paramedics, you can see them in their what kind of looked like spacesuits there in the middle shot. That's where they're wearing their PAPRs, their powered air purifier respirators. And this is one of the tools that we were able to use to keep our paramedics safe and keep them on the road and delivering services for our residents. Paramedics were very much involved in the response. They participated in the COVID assessment centers doing testing, and they also were out in the community doing vaccinations in addition to their regular operations. They particularly focused on homebound, as well as helping out in some of our congregate care settings. We also saw the county perform a brand new task. We created a call center when we had to quickly convene the vaccination center for our 80+ residents, and we pulled together a social services team, created a call center in what would normally be our emergency operations center, and we booked appointments for over 3,300 residents to make sure that they could get their vaccinations as early as possible. We also saw our public works team work very hard throughout, and in particular of interest was waste. And for a little bit of fun and a little bit of education, we did see our team win an award for their Facebook Live series on county waste management, and particularly the tips and tricks of recycling in the county. We'll go over to the next slide now, Glenn, and here we highlight some things like tourism. Of course, we did try to promote tourism through 2021, and that was really with the focus on shopping local or even hyper local, so really limited to the residents of the county and our very local nearby neighbors. The Business Entrepreneurship Center was continued working throughout and really focusing on the Faster Forward Summit program to help our small businesses, and really some of that focus was helping them go digital, where they were able to do that and maintain their operations. Court services, we're really proud of what they were able to do with virtual courts and now moving to a hybrid model. And we're one of the first in the province that are able to offer that, especially for an organization the size of Northumberland. Our communications team kept busy throughout the pandemic, and we're also very proud of the partnership that we had with the Ontario Health Team Northumberland, which was newly formed just before the pandemic started. And we saw our teams partner on a number of initiatives. That's where the paramedics work closely around vaccinations and response, and that worked out very well. So with that, I'll switch over to some of our base business and looking back at 2021. And we will start off with economic prosperity and innovation in some of our highlighted programs. We did launch the construction of Elgin Park. Elgin Park is an affordable housing development that we have owned and operated since the downloads at the corner of Elgin Street and Darcy in Coburg. This is a series of townhouses. We are demolishing those townhouses and reconstructing with apartment style 10-plex units. We will be moving from 18 to 40 units. It will be a mix of our rent geared to income and affordable market. So we're very excited, and we did partner with Habitat for Humanity to do the demo on those buildings so they could take out anything that they could sell through their restore. In addition to Elgin Park, we also kicked off and announced an Ontario Street project in Coburg. Again, this will be a 62-unit building. It's in the pre-design phase, and there we'll have partnerships with the Ontario Aboriginal Housing, as well as Habitat for Humanity and the Northumberland County Housing Corporation. So we're very excited as that project moves forward. We also saw, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of work around entrepreneurship and supporting local businesses. The BECN helped to launch over 50 new businesses, and that translates to about 108 new jobs locally. And again, a lot of that was through the digital footprint program and helping the online presence be enhanced for a lot of those small businesses. We also saw 26 new food programs, food businesses launched through the Ontario Agri-Food Venture Centre last year. And we saw the continuation of the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. And this was a program that we led on behalf of 5 constituencies in Eastern Ontario. And it saw 225 women-led startups get the resources and the supports that they needed to launch their businesses successfully. We also saw a significant focus through economic renewal and recovery. And here, one of the focuses was on tourism, and particularly tourism and the wellness experience. And we know there are a number of businesses throughout Northumberland that focus on, in this case, we can see a picture of the spa setting, but there's also a lot of outdoor activities and recreation that is really becoming quite popular and attractive in the county as a tourism destination. Looking at sustainable growth, here we moved to some of the planning type activities. We did adopt the natural heritage system that is part of our official plan. That was approved, and then we moved into the Northumberland Next, which is the how we're, I guess, promoting our update to the official plan, and that did kick off last year, and we're continuing to advance that through 2022. We also saw the approval of the update to the countywide development charges last year, and that was really focusing on growth pays for growth, and Glenn will talk a little bit more about that later on. We finalized our forest management plan, and that was approved in early 2022, making sure that we are preserving our forest. We're using it both as the environmental benefits as well as the recreational aspects of the forest, and also the logging component and revenue generation. So making sure that all those pillars of our forest are balanced. Of course, we had a focus again on significant infrastructure maintenance work. We saw the start of the Golden Plough Lodge and Museum construction. That's our redevelopment of a 180-bed long-term care home. So that is moving forward. We did significant work on broadband, and we did have a very exciting announcement on Friday afternoon in Codrington, where we announced just how extensive that project will be, and with substantial provincial and federal government as well as the private sector. So very exciting. This is the first presentation that I've been able to do and actually tell what we mean when we say that we have done work on broadband. The Dartford Bridge rehabilitation project got started, as well as traffic flow improvements to the intersections in Campbellford, where there's some the ongoing challenges with getting traffic to flow over the bridge. All of our usual work with paving and surface treatment. And then, of course, you're aware of the work that we've begun to do on Prince Edward Street Railway Crossing, and we'll see more of that this year. Thriving in inclusive communities. This is also a number of projects that we had more around human services. We did the community safety and well-being plan that was approved, and we'll see that move into implementation. A lot of work with member municipalities and a wide range of community partners looking at safety needs. We did also look at a number of activities because of the social services relief funding through COVID. We could enhance things like sheltering programs. There was warming rooms for both nighttime and daytime available. They were in Coburg through partnerships with the community there in helping to assist with the homeless community and ensuring they had shelter options. We also saw the launch of the Capital Investments Program last year, and this is a new program to incentivize the private sector in the development of affordable housing, and we look to see that grow in the future years as we look at seeing more attainable as well as the county operated programs in housing. And we also got approval in November for the long-term care community paramedicine program, and we're very excited that we'll get to see that launch this spring. For leadership and change, these are some of the things that happen a little more administratively or in governance. And we did see the governance structure change. We now have our standing committees that meet at the beginning of each month. There's 6 of those, so that we can be more transparent in both how decisions are made and communicating information with the public. So that has been well received, and it's well entrenched now in our processes. We did significant community engagement activities. In particular, we had a pilot participatory budgeting program last year. We worked very hard on IT infrastructure, particularly modernizing security with the focus on cybersecurity challenges. And we were also proud to note that we did receive a Marcom Gold Award for our annual report. That's a report that each year has significant effort put into it, and it is a great document for those that would like to get up to speed on the breadth and scope of county operations and financials. And finally, I'll talk a little bit more about the Ontario Health Team that is moving forward with a lot of work and partnership there. The focus being on a number of activities, community outreach being one of those. And we saw the outreach center open up in Colborne to take healthcare into rural areas, as well as expanding community paramedicine program and the Northumberland peer support to help families and individuals navigate the healthcare system. And with that, I will switch and talk a little bit about 2022. And when we look at some of the key initiatives there, thank you, Glenn. As I mentioned, we're launching the community care paramedicine program for long-term care. Very exciting to help individuals, primarily those that are on the wait list for long-term care, and receive more healthcare supports in their home. And what we've been doing already in 2021 was very well received from the community. As I mentioned, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan was approved, and we'll move forward with implementing some of the actions that were identified. That's in the early phases, but the focus there will be on homelessness and affordable housing, substance use and addictions, poverty, employment and income, and mental health. And I think we're all very aware of the impact that those issues have in our community and the interest in moving some of those priorities forward. We also continue to see work being done in partnership between our early years programming in the Indigenous community, and the Friendship Center out of Peterborough is working very closely with our team. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, the Ontario Health Team Northumberland, we are part of that leadership group, and we would encourage everybody to participate right now. They're going through consultation on the strategic plan, and it would be great to have input from the broader community. The next slide will talk a little bit more, as I've talked about the Elgin Park redevelopment. Those buildings are now demolished, and we're just eagerly awaiting the final approval so that we can move forward with the construction. We continue to develop and build. We're up out of the ground with the golden plow. We can see more and more concrete being on that site every day as I drive by. The continued detailed design of the Campbellford Bridge is moving forward. We will also see the replacement of the Thompson Bridge or the Loomis Bridge and detailed design for Thompson Bridge to be done next year. We are continuing to advance Northumberland Next. As I mentioned, that's the update to our official plan. And we'll continue on with also a number of other activities, in particular, rolling out the broadband initiative that was announced on Friday. And then moving on to the next slide, we've updated our multi-year accessibility plan. That's already been approved this year. We're on track to have our county asset management plan approved this summer and submitted to the province on schedule. The Northumberland County Housing Strategic Plan and Social Housing Master Plan is being developed, and that's looking at our current mix of housing assets and identifying how we will manage those assets going forward, as well as strategically identifying additional housing, new construction opportunities. And as mentioned a couple of times, modernizing our IT infrastructure continues to be a priority. And with that, I will turn it over to Glenn for the last couple of slides on the financials.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, and good evening, everybody. So I'm just going to provide a really brief summary on the county's budget for 2022 over the next two slides. And this is really typical to what we've shown in the past, highlighting information from a budget infographic that we have available on the county's website. So on this first slide from the infographic, you can see at the top right that the county levy increase for 2022 after growth was 3.1%. Of this, 0.4% or $250,000 comes from the new annual hospital grants that were approved by council. This was the first year of 5 years that was approved by council, so this will continue on for a further 4 years. This then leaves the increase specific to the county coming in at 2.7%, with this further broken down as a 0.8% increase for dedicated infrastructure investments, and then 1.9% for the county's base operating levy increase. At the top left, you can see that the total county budget is just over 181 million. With 63 million of this funded from property taxation. Similar to 2021, we do continue to see a significant amount of the budget attributed to capital, and primarily this is driven to a large extent by the GPL NCAM redevelopment project, with this project being funded by a combination of debt through Infrastructure Ontario, provincial funding dollars, a dedicated county reserve that we have been contributing to for several years, as well as the county's new development charges. So turning more now to the operating budget side of things, there were several significant uncontrollable and committed items that were impacting 2022 for the base budget. So really with the increase coming in on our base levy budget at 1.9% in respect to those uncontrollable committed items, with that increase at 1.9%, it really is primarily a status quo budget. So just as an example on some of those items, one of the major ones was the impact of the new waste collection contract and program being realized over a 2-year period. So 2022 representing the second year of that impact. This alone represented a 1.2% increase on the county's budget for 2022. Further, there were significant impacts from the annual health unit increase that the county is required to provide for, as well as an increase in insurance costs, which really was a common problem for all municipalities within Ontario. I'll also just touch on the first graph that you see on this slide here, halfway down the slide, where you can see that the county is heavily reliant on grants and subsidies, estimated at 47.4 million for the year. And this is really for funding various areas of mandatory service delivery that the county is required to provide for, areas such as Ontario Works, childcare, social housing, long-term care, and paramedics. And this primarily does come from various provincial ministries that we receive funding from. So again, this is from the infographic, and what we're focusing on here is the county's 10-year financial plan, but more specifically to the capital portion of our 10-year long-term model. So at a very high level, the model anticipates approximately 355 million for major capital over 10 years, including the recurring annual transportation construction program, but also as well as some large extraordinary one-time projects that are either underway or contemplated, such as the GPL redevelopment project, which is underway in its second year of construction, as well as development of new social housing stock. Jennifer mentioned the Elgin Street project, as well as what we have contemplated for Ontario Street, and other increases to our social housing stock over the 10-year model, with placeholders for financing those. So many of these forecasted capital projects were identified within the county's first countywide development charge background study. So as Jennifer had mentioned, that the county really is now well positioned to source much needed financing from development charges, ensuring that growth pays for those growth related costs that were identified within the county's first countywide background study. 2021 did represent the first full year of the new county DC, and it resulted in receipts of approximately 1.6 million within the year. We know growth is continuing regardless of development charges, so timing for implementation of the county DC really was prudent as a tool for sourcing financing for these growth-related projects. So while mentioning capital, I'm just going to provide a bit of a brief note on some of the cost escalations that we're likely to see here from inflation. The latest non-residential construction price index is in excess of 15% for the GTA. This is really indicative of what we see from a capital and a construction basis within the county's budget. And overall, this will create challenges when we start updating the long-term model for this upcoming budgetary cycle, as well as what we're seeing for cost escalations within the current year. And that this will be a common problem really for all municipalities when looking at inflation. And on the operating side, and then certainly this is very prevalent in the media lately, CPI, the latest measure is 6.7%. So again, challenges on the operating side from an inflationary perspective as we enter into updating for the 2023 budget, as well as the county's long-term plan. A quick note on COVID. It's anticipated that there will be sufficient provincial funding to offset any pressures within the year. We have safe restart funding, as well as various iterations of social services relief funding that have been used, and various pockets of funds from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care towards our paramedics operations and the GPL for long-term care. I'll just close out with the impact to the average homeowner in Northumberland from the increase in the county's budget for the year, and it equates to approximately $38 for the average residential home within the county. So that does conclude our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you, CAO Moore, Director Dees. We appreciate you coming to Council providing us with this overview, and I will open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification. Councillor Bateman.
I have a few here, but I'll go one by one because somebody else might ask it and I can cross it off. The first one I'll ask under at the bottom of the slide for your 2022 budget and long-term plan under the Brighton Shared Emergency Services base. Is that making reference to a new build for the fire department and the paramedic? Because we know with the expansion of Brighton or the growth of Brighton, and we've heard several times that our fire station is showing its age. Is that's what that making reference to? And does the $1.1 million represent the total cost, or is that the Northumberland portion that would be going towards that?
I believe it's the Northumberland portion, but Director?
Yeah, so that's correct. That's a placeholder that we had in the 2022 budget towards what the county's portion of the cost would be towards any capital work should they move forward in 2022. And certainly if they don't, it's something we would transfer into reserves for future needs.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there are any affordable / attainable housing projects in the sites for Brighton in the near future.
Thank you. I can speak to that one a little bit. We don't have anything at this point in time. We are actively looking for land acquisition opportunities, and we would certainly look for the municipality to assist if they're aware of appropriate lands for that. We do look through real estate on a regular basis to identify properties that may be available, as well as pursue if there's surplus lands from either provincial government, school boards, and so on, where we can repurpose lands for a community benefit. So yes, we're looking. We don't have anything on the books as of yet that would be suitable, but we are certainly open to getting something queued up in all of our member municipalities.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman.
Just formed a question off of the deputy mayors. When you're talking about affordable housing and you talked about Elgin Park redevelopment, are you referencing when you say affordable the same as your rent to own or geared to income? Because it references community housing, social housing, and we've used the term affordable housing. Are we all talking about the same thing?
CAL?
Thank you. Some of those terms are very specific in how we define them and how we use them in common language. When we talk about community housing and social housing, we generally use those terms fairly interchangeably. We're generally there referring to facilities that are owned and operated by the county through the Housing Services Corporation. When we talk about affordable, the definition that we use in social housing is 80% of average market rent or lower. And that's what that would mean. So that would be defined as affordable. When we talk about RGI, that's rent geared to income, and that's typically subsidized units where we look at the ability of an individual or family to pay, and then there is a subsidy to cover the balance of that. And then we also have terms that are commonly used outside of what would be the county's core role in housing. And we talk about things like attainable housing, and that's generally more modest type market units. They would be of a value that individuals that were working could afford. They could also, but they tend to be home ownership. And then we kind of go up the scale from there. So we look at housing as a continuum, with RGI being on one end of the spectrum, and then the more market-driven housing units and ownership being on the far end of the spectrum.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your report so far tonight. It's been very good. Something that was I didn't see on your report is about transportation. Recently, there was a huge announcement about Go Transit coming to the area and providing service from Trent Hills, Brighton, etc. And I just wondered how much the cost of that pilot project was going to be burdened by Northumberland County.
CAO.
Thank you. Yes, so that pilot project is it's a connection to Go. So to be clear, it won't be an actually a Go operated facility. It is going to be a pilot operated by the county in conjunction with a private sector partner that will have the technology to do on-demand type of service. And it's similar to a pilot project that's already underway with the Northumberland Manufacturers Association. So it really is building on that and expanding the routes, as well as an addition with a connection to the Oshawa GO station. So we've received, it's about $50,000 in funding from the province. That was their contribution. We're currently finalizing costing. The pilot won't go live until about July. So we're working on the costing. We did have, I think, Glenn, it was about 200,000, if I remember correctly, in the budget this year to put towards transit development and transit pilots, looking at that type of funding. So exactly how much of that we are currently are finalizing, and then we also have the provincial contribution. So that would be the maximum amount that we would look to fund for the pilot.
Follow up on the transit one?
Just as a follow-up, there were 2 news reports just recently on that, and I was rather shocked when I saw those reports. It was such a huge announcement. The county, there was a comment made that $300,000 was going to be spent by the county towards this project, which, the project is worth looking at. I agree, and I'm excited about it, as many residents are. But $50,000 from the province, and the announcement made it sound like, I hope it's going to happen this summer for $50,000. But don't you feel that seemed to be a surprise?
I think that we as staff, we work closely with all of our counterparts at other levels of government. And when there's funding available, we look to acquire the funding and add it to anything that we have in our own budget so that we can maximize the projects. And I think we were really pleased to have some additional funding provided by the province. So I like it. Most of our funding opportunities will take what we can get to help get these projects going, and hopefully we can see some great ridership and get some good data. So we'll be able to work with Metrolinx in the future to see if there is sufficient support to make some of these transit services permanent in the future. So I think we'll take what we can get from the province to see these pilots launched and get that data.
I'm going to go to Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question is under road projects. Everybody sitting around this table, remember during our budget process, we talked about roads to great detail. And we even had comments about when we have the county here, we should ask them these questions. So you're here. So under that $144.5 million, how much of that is going to be allocated towards Brighton roads, and you know which ones? Because when I make reference to our budget time, we had extensive discussions around Telephone Road and the redevelopment of that. And I personally still think that I would like to have seen the county do something with that road. But if you can speak to of that, what will Brighton see of that, and what roads possibly would it be, if you know?
I don't have that at my fingertips this evening. We can pull that and make sure that we have any projects that are in Brighton. I know there is the work with the Prince Edward Street Railway Crossing is on track for this year, and I know there is Loomis Bridge will be 2 of the larger projects that we've been talking about, but I don't know about any paving or resurfacing. I'd have to go back and look at where they are. There are projects throughout the county, so I'm not sure exactly which ones will be in Brighton. I know we've done a lot of work in Brighton over the last couple of years with paving, and I think now we're getting closer to the Trent Hills portion there. But we can certainly follow up through email. We can send that through to the clerk and report back on that.
Sorry, I could just add to that, Jennifer, that 144.5 is for 10 years. And typically our transportation and construction provides for detail over 5 years. So we could likely provide detail over 5 years, and then the rest are really placeholders that we have going out in the last 5 years of our 10-year model for the total funding that's available.
And just to follow up as well, there will be some work with regard to the environmental assessment for the Prince Edward Street redevelopment as well. That's a shared service. We'll be talking a little bit about that tonight, actually, and reports coming up. Councillor Anderson, you had another question.
Oh, just a final note that it's it's nice to see there's so much going on in Northumberland County, but we always like to send that message. I like to send that message back that these projects in Brighton are really important as well. So Councillor Bateman talked about housing and affordable housing, the roads, yeah, we talked about Prince Edward Street. We talked about that for a long time. Telephone road we talked about. So we need to see that focus continue, or at least get accelerated on this part of the county. That attention it's been nice to see some of the provincial attention this year, and hopefully that'll continue. Thanks.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mayor. I have three questions. The first
Councillor
one is-
LeBlanc, could you draw your microphone closer to you, please?
Thank you very much. I have three questions. The first one is when you were talking about Loomis Bridge, you used the word next year. Is it this year or next year?
It's this year. I'll answer that question.
You said next year. I caught on.
No,
to that.
there was two bridges on the bullet point. There's Loomis Bridge and Thompson Bridge. Thompson Bridge is in Trent Hills. So those bridges were approved together as part of one report with council and one discussion at budget time. So Loomis has a design already completed, so it is being tendered for construction this year, and Thompson is to be designed this year and construction next year.
On the Loomis Bridge design, I couldn't find the drawings. I tried to find them through your website. Is it a 2-lane or a 1-lane bridge?
It's a replacement of the existing 1-lane structure.
Okay, thank you. The other comment I had was on you mentioned the waste contract. And I happened to be at the bidding document and I read the entire waste contract. I was wondering, we're going now into the third year. Do you know when Miller is going to fulfill its agreement? Are there smaller garbage trucks to pick up to go on their smaller roads? When that's going to take place? I know you've done some of them in our municipality, but there's still several that they got to bring their waste to the end of the road. When is that going to take place? It's been 3 years now.
I'd have to talk to our waste department for each individual roadway. Each roadway gets assessed to determine what condition the road is in and pick up in time. So they've been moving through that process. If there's if specific roads, or I can check with Adam and see where they're at. I know they, like you said, they have transitioned over some, and I'm not sure others where they're at with those. And where they are with assessing and evaluating the road condition.
Okay. The third question, I read your 10-year budget plan, which totals up to 325 million, 330 million over the next 10 years. But your operating cost to achieve that is going to be just a touch over $1 billion of operating and staffing to manage $325 million worth of projects over 10 years. Those are your numbers.
Is there a question?
Yeah. Is that efficient use of the taxpayers' money?
I think that's a question for county council, not for the staff.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to bring that up at budget time if I'm still around the table. Any other questions for CAO or Director Dees? Well, thank you both. And with that, I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council received the presentation regarding the County of Northumberland budget from Jennifer Moore, CAO, and Glenn Dees, Director of Finance. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you both. Always appreciate you coming to Brighton.
Thanks. Everybody.
Take care. Good night. That brings us to citizens' comment. Madam Clerk, I don't see any here. Mr. Hagerman, is there any in that bin? Thank you. Are we aware of anyone joining us on Zoom for a comment? Thank you. That brings us to staff reports. Our first report is with regard to the naming of assets, King Edward Community Center. Madam Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council received the staff report regarding the naming of corporate assets, renaming of King Edward Community Center, and that council approve the renaming of the King Edward Community Center to the Owen Gibb Community Hall. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just pleased to see this happen. I think as some of the comments that we've received here regarding Mr. Gibb, they're obviously very positive, and I think if there is anyone well-deserved of being recognized, I think it's Owen, and pleased to see this completed now. Thank you.
As am I. Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree with this, that it's well deserved. Also, a few residents reached out to me. One was Mr. Joe Banbury and his wife, and a few other residents. And they talked to me about the Simpsons, how the Simpsons started the hockey arena, the ball diamonds, brought the sports here. He was through the thing. And it would be nice that I just to put the offer, could it be the Gibbs Simpson Arena, a joint, because they're two well-prominent family and well-known family within the area, or just go with one?
Deputy
They're
Mayor.
both deserving. One's no better than the other.
Deputy Mayor.
I don't think we're renaming the arena, just the community center. Is that
That's correct.
So the arena is going to remain the King Edward. It's going to remain the King Edward Park. We're just renaming the community center. Just
That is correct. Just the
Okay.
community center portion of the building.
thank you. I just need that clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Your comments weren't being ignored, but perhaps for another day, something to be considered. Thank you. Our next report is with regard to the Municipality of Brighton 2022 municipal and school board elections procedure. Deputy Clerk, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council received the report and attached Municipality of Brighton 2022 municipal and school board elections alternative voting method procedures as information. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Our next report is with regard to cost sharing agreement with Northumberland County for the design of water and wastewater infrastructure replacement on Prince Edward Street between Elizabeth Street and 100 County Road 64. Mr. Gooding, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir? And I will point out that this is Mr. Gooding's first Brighton Council experience. So at the button at the side, and then the button in front of you, the lavender button. There you go.
Much appreciated. No, I do not, Your Worship.
How easy was that, John? Right there. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Connect, that council receive the staff report, cost sharing agreement with Northumberland County for design of water and wastewater infrastructure replacement on Prince Edward Street between Elizabeth Street and 100 County Road 64, and further that council approve a memorandum of understanding cost sharing agreement with Northumberland County for 50% of the costs of detailed design for the integrated infrastructure renewal of County Road 64, being Prince Edward Street between Elizabeth Street and 100 County Road 64, being Harbor Street, in the amount of $165,184.50. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. This has changed. Next report is with regard to the reconstruction of Addison and Napoleon Street. Mr. Gooding, we've read Mr. Linton's report. I understand there are some changes which I'd ask you to highlight, please.
Through the mayor to council. The Director of Finance and Administrative Services pointed out that the contract had to be broken up amongst business units, being tax support, water support, and wastewater support. So while the contract in its entirety is under budget, the tax support portion is over budget by $112,332.25. And staff is requesting that the shortfall be funded by transfer from the Ontario Community Infrastructure Reserve Fund. This will leave a remaining balance in the Ontario Community Infrastructure Reserve Fund of approximately $365,000. But in its entirety, we came in under budget from what was approved.
Thank you, Mr. Gooding. I do have a motion that's been moved by the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Rowley, but the wording on the new report is different. So with permission of you, Deputy Mayor, as the mover, and you, Councillor Rowley, as the seconder, I will read the wording on the new report as your motion. You have the report in front of you. So the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Councillor Rowley, reads that council will award the reconstruction of Addison Street and Napoleon Street contract to Beacon Construction Limited in the amount of $1,460,986.10, inclusive of provisional items, 15% contingency and expense portion of HST. And council authorizes to transfer the additional tax support funds of $112,332.25 from the Ontario Community Infrastructure Reserve Fund. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this going to kind of complete that little area down there in the Napoleon, Addison, Monk? This will kind of update all of that mess that's been down there for a few years.
I understand what you're saying. Carry on. I think that completes the infrastructure projects for that area of our community. Is that correct, Mr. Gooding?
That is correct. The street connects into a lot of already reconstructed roads, and we're just kind of cleaning off that area.
Right, because that's been a major issue for several years. So this will kind of fix all of that.
And
up
one
in
of
that
the
corner.
older portions of infrastructure in the
Correct.
community.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just in my opinion, the 112,000 from the OSIF reserve is absolutely appropriate use of that Ontario infrastructure money. This is exactly why we're able to do this project this year, is that extra OSIF funding. So good work to staff for bringing that forward. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. For the record, Councillor Tadman has left the chambers at 7:57 p.m. Our next report is with regard to the municipal accommodation tax. Mr. Hagerman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not.
I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the report for information and direct staff to begin the process of instituting a municipal accommodation tax in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
Just so I can fully understand this, it says the MAT regulation requires 50% of the municipal accommodation tax revenue to be paid to one or more eligible tourism entities. When would they, if we went with this, when and how would that be identified? Is that would be a staff decision on which one? Would that come back to council? And the second part of that, would the DBIA and the Brighton Chamber be considered eligible when looking at this?
Mr. Hagerman.
Confidently say DBIA would not be considered a tourism entity. Chamber, there might be some teeth there, but I can't say either way as of right now. Something like our DMO, the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board, makes a lot of sense as we're already in an MOU with them. Yeah, that would probably be a staff decision based on council support as well.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of add to what Councillor Bateman just said. If some of those funds were to go to the Bay of Quinte Tourism Marketing Board, would that be over and above what council has already committed over their 5-year contract with them? Would this be extra, or would this kind of subsidize what we are already sending to them?
Mr.
That's my
Hagerman?
first question.
Yes, so we pay a per capita funding. That would continue. And then this would be over and above to offer more support for tourism marketing programs.
As is the case in the other municipalities with the MAT tax. Yeah. Deputy Mayor.
If I can just expand on that as well, that what we pay for in tourism marketing and what the MAT tax goes to, they are a little bit different. And so if you eliminate one, you eliminate some of your services with the Bay of Quinte Marketing Board, because I'm on the board there. And I do know the other municipalities do send their MAT tax there just because they're capable of doing an overall marketing plan project. We see what they've done as compared to some of the smaller organizations.
Which I'm told.
Go ahead. If it's part and parcel of the discussion, go ahead.
Right, which I'm totally supportive of, that's for sure. I was just thinking that I didn't want to kind of take away from what we already do in order to kind of leverage what we get. And I have another question, but I'll wait because Councillor Anderson.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I think I'm very familiar with this, and I know the effects that this will have on some individual operators in our municipality. But it is very important going forward that we recognize those tourism opportunities and where this money is going to go towards. I think, and I know we haven't nailed it down, but it says it's recommended 5%, and the others are supporting by 4%. So I would think that we should stay within the norm at 4% should be appropriate, but that's up to council to decide, I guess. And it also says that upwards of 300,000, is it 300,000? Somewhere I read $300,000 could be borne by this. If that's in a year, that's pretty generous. And half of that would go to the Bay of Quinte. 150,000. That's why it's important that we recognize what we would like to see from generating that amount of money out of the residents of Brighton. Ben, can you address that portion of it, of the amount of money? And let me say, when I was representing Belleville and those other areas in my other life, many hotels in that region that raise this amount of money, and that's what drives that whole market. And now the county's involved too. The county wasn't for a while, and so that money is really needed for the tourism in that part of the region. So we will be dependent on very few motel rooms. So
Yeah, through the mayor, I'll try to touch on a few things there. We have a recommendation of 5% in the report as it stands right now. Some of our neighboring municipalities, yes, are at 4%. I realize that. By the time we are to get this all moving and shaking in the right direction, we're going to be well into probably 2023, maybe even a little bit beyond. So I believe that Belleville, Quinte West, they'll probably be maybe up 1% by then. So the 5% is just to kind of look at the rate of inflation, look at, things changing in our economy and trying to hit something there. I believe it's about 123,000 that the estimate that kind of we've put together for each the municipality and the DMO that we choose to work with. Substantial amount of dollars for each organization. And something that the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board has done is they've given back 10% of their allotment back to the local DBIA. So in this case, with this rough estimate that I've given you in the report, we're looking at approximately $12,000 back to our DBIA, which could be incredibly sufficient for their marketing efforts in the downtown.
That's a lot of money for our DBA for marketing.
Even if
purposes.
it's somewhere between 5 and 10,
Exactly,
right?
100%. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on Councillor Bateman or Councillor Anderson and kind of support what Mr. Hagerman was saying. I think we're behind the 8 ball already. So to start at 4%, I think is a bit low. I think we've done those things over the years before. History tells us that if we start too low, we never catch up. So I think we need to kind of get our foot in the door. And if adding 1% to kind of get small communities like ours moving, I'm good with at least 5%. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And just to be clear as well, Councillor Anderson, you mentioned what the residents were paying for. I'm not sure if you meant that in that way, but it's actually the tourists who are paying this, and it's tourists paying for tourism. And that's the kind of thing we need to do, is where we don't have our taxpayers putting as much of the bill for this sort of thing. So I see it as a win-win, and I'd be okay with 5% as well.
I think Councillor Anderson fully intends to take Mrs. Anderson to Presqu'île for the vacation. And I'm sure she looked forward to that.
I can get a rebate. At the end of the
Exactly.
year,
And then you
too,
get your
right?
provincial rebate as
Anybody
well.
know that? No, I was referring to the long-term. Yeah, no, not the residents as, and I wouldn't be paying for it. No, but anyone with that, 5% on top of their $150 or $200 and $350 a night for a stay in Brighton. We will, you know, they've already said something about it, but I expect that. So I only bring it up for discussion, and it's on the table.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
We all pay it when we go anywhere else,
Exactly.
right? So it's all part of it.
Exactly. Councillor Bateman.
Would this apply to bed and breakfast as well, or is this just strictly STAs?
I believe it would apply to any short-term
Any
accommodation,
accommodator in the community, that's correct.
including a hotel if one were to come. Councillor Bateman.
Just to follow up to that, and I agree, I think it's a good thing, but for the CAO, is there any staff implications? Because this is, we've got a beast in front of us just to identify all the SCAs currently. So now you're going to be adding a tax collection portion, a licensing portion. So what's the impacts of that on staffing?
CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's to be determined. My understanding of mat tax is that there's an administrative burden or a portion of the actual mat tax that goes back to the municipality to deal with administrative services. My recollection off the top of my head is it's about plus or minus 10% or so. So hopefully that amount will cover whatever administrative burden that we have.
Any further comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Would you mind? Thank you. I don't blame her.
Thank you. So I have a motion in front of me, moved by Councillor LeBlanc and seconded by Councillor Tadman. Whereas some members of council have requested clarification regarding promotional advertising protocols in terms of contract work that has been established with the Beacon magazine. And whereas some members of council have requested clarification on the terms of this contract and have yet to receive a response within the required timeline of 48 hours. And whereas some members of council have noted that these questions respectfully be answered to provide clarification. Therefore, it is requested that the following questions be addressed. The Beacon magazine has brought up the Beacon magazine was brought up as a letter of interest approximately 2 years ago and currently exists as a means of promoting the municipality and certain council members and staff, as well as the overall operation of the municipality. At what point did the letter of interest submitted by the Beacon become a termed contract with the cost of the municipality? Was there a tender process provided to other local businesses for this contract? What was the date of the council that council voted to agree with the Beacon becoming a primary source of promotional advertising for the municipality? And what was the details of this contract, cost, length of terms, etc.? What has the cost to date been for the contract with the Beacon? And has there been any discussion regarding a potential conflict of interest or self-promotion? Any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I find this a little bit confusing because I don't know that we've ever really dealt with it. And some of the comments as far as promoting the municipality, certain council members and staff, we've all had an invitation, whether or not we wanted to be interviewed by staff. I've not seen anything in any of our budget deliberations that we contracted anything with the Beacon. So, you know, for some, maybe it looks, you know, like we're maybe promoting one or the other, but at this point, I don't, if there are answers to these questions, I don't know what they are, and I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I think some of the questions probably were answered at the beginning when this first came to our attention. I'm not even going to go there because I know some of them were. I've got the answers from this meeting. There's one. Has there been any discussion regarding a potential conflict of interest or self-promotion? I would tell you that that's something, a question for the integrity commissioner, if somebody's making a point here. So, but other than that, I still not going to vote for this either. I think, I don't see, I have enough information. I was asked if they could interview me way back, and I believe it was discussed with their economic development that we would each take a turn, and we all said, okay. And they said, Anderson, you're first alphabetically. I remember that. So they called me and away we went. And I guess you got a call. So some decided not to take part. That's fine. But I don't think I've conflicted by getting interviewed by a magazine. So I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. And I think in terms of conflict of interest, it's up to each member of council to declare that. It's not a discussion for council about conflict. But Ben is here. Are you able to comment on any of this, or are you prepared to comment on any of this, or it's up to you?
Just need to be really careful, but I can confidently say we're not in any sort of contract with this publication. We purchase an ad in every issue. That's the only obligation that we have with this publication.
You purchase an ad, but
And we promote various things going on in the community at whatever the season might be.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So there is no contract.
No.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. Personally, I find that this magazine is full of local content. I think it, some of the other visitor guides that we have, some of them are outdated. Some of them need to be picked up, ramped up a little bit. I think myself, this magazine, regardless of whether we're highlighting staff and or council members or whoever, I think there's a lot of good local information. It highlights some good local businesses, and I don't see any issue with it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Miss my glasses here. So with this magazine, I remember very well, it came as a letter of content, just as some just briefly wasn't voted on, just received. But what has happened is, I don't know if Mr. Hageman, our director of not our director, but our economic development person, takes photos for it or does any writing for it. But when you look at it, we have a member of council that works here, works at the magazine. And right now the magazine is the prime mover, which is a good magazine and promotes a lot of our stuff and a lot of advertising and everything. But some of our other magazines that are local can't get any advertising because the Beacon has become the gold standard. You advertise in the Beacon or you don't. But there's a member of council that's there. He works there. He may not get paid, but he gets paid bonuses, incentives, and everything because his job there is to bring in new business. The new business has been brought in. In the previous council, there was a council member that was a developer. He was there in conflict. He never built a house in the 8 years it was here, but he was ridiculed. This, if you look at it and you close your eyes and you look at it with intent and you look at it through, he works there, the member works there, gets paid there, gets bonuses there, with all the extra ad and the ads that go in all the way through.
Councillor LeBlanc, if there's a concern for you about conflict of interest, we as a council we don't make those decisions and we can't have that discussion, but you certainly can go to the integrity commissioner, but we have to move away from that conversation.
All right.
Because conflict of interest isn't for us to decide.
It is you got to have it in your heart to do it. And the thing is it the integrity commissioner or is it the ombudsman that has to come and look at it? I haven't decided which one.
Either way, it's not for council to discuss and decide. At the end of the day, right, conflict of interest. But if there are other parts of your motion you want to discuss, please.
Is the staff doing any writing or photographs towards it?
Yes, there would, through the deputy mayor, there would be editorial support given, yes.
Yeah, that's using taxpayer funds that isn't given to other magazines.
Councillor Tadman.
Thank you. I don't want to go into the conflict of interest in any way, but I do want to stress the fact that we've all proclaimed that we want to support Brighton business. This business is not from Brighton. We have a very good business in Brighton alone that has done this work for us for years at a good price. And I don't think they were asked. I'm almost positive they weren't asked. So do we stand by that we support Brighton? I know I do. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Once again, I want to bring up, sitting on the DBIA board, we've had this discussion as well. And we get requests from lots of magazines, lots of, the seasonal ones. They're popular. I haven't got any names, there was the county ones, the watershed, those kind of things. None of them are local. We get requests. They bring us a quote as to what we can do, whether it's the Beacon, whether it's the watershed, whether it's whatever. Do we get information from the local printers? Sometimes we do. We use them a lot as well. But in this case, there's nothing different. And like I said, as far as promoting business, the Beacon promotes a lot of the DBIA business. Like I said, it stays local. It gives lots of local content. I think it's a great magazine for what it has accomplished.
And I think some of the local, I think the one you're referring to is a printer. I'm not sure if they're a publisher. They are a publisher as well. Okay, thank you.
May I have an example of what they publish for us, Papa?
Not up the top of my head, but I know there are publishers, Emily, and you know that too.
And I know they look after the visitor's guide here. And once again, we've had discussions around the DBIA table. We don't hear from this particular publisher very much. And I know there's concern about updating a lot of this stuff. And maybe they're too busy printing and they don't do that much publishing anymore.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Bateman? And then
I'm not going to debate who's good and who's not, because I think they all are. This magazine, I think it goes without saying. I don't think anybody could say it's not a good magazine. The content's good, the covers are good, all that stuff. This is just my opinion. I think a lot of the issues could have been resolved with better communication. Councillor Anderson, you mentioned that it was discussed at an economic development meeting, but I don't recall that ever being brought in the minutes. I think if it was, it would have ease some of the discussion, because I can remember clearly on October, and it was 2019, is when I first heard about this magazine, and I had no clue what people were talking about. We were at the Rural Advisory Committee meeting, and I heard someone talking about a Beacon magazine, and interviews were done. So to find it out and gossip, and not gossip, but just chit chat after a meeting that's totally different, a lot of this possibly could have been avoided with better transparency and better communication, because it wasn't, this is what we're going to do. We have this opportunity, and it wasn't rolled out that way. And it might have gone a little smoother if it was, because I don't think we were officially told whether we have to or not. It just, if you are, it just lends to better communication when it's openly told to people. Because that's how I found out about the Beacon magazine, and people were talking, did you get the first issue? And that was when we were at a different committee meeting, and I had no clue as a member of council what they were talking about.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman, I'm just going to have Councillor Anderson respond, because he had a response to one of the questions.
Ben, if you could confirm, it was at a meeting, a council meeting. I don't know the date. It could be October. You specifically asked who would want that I would be first. You mentioned that I would go first, and you went around and we'll go in order alphabetically. And it was just brought on lightly that this new publication was coming to town, and I think there was even a survey done about just prior to that, if the municipality needed another source of because the Independent had been slowing down. They had gone through a changeover of ownership. We weren't happy. I wasn't happy with what was happening, and an opportunity was, somebody saw an opportunity to come forward with another publication, or I'll call it publication, but a magazine, that would be supported, obviously, with advertising. And they took a while to do that, but they put out a good product. I know who you're talking about locally. I agree with locally, we do everything we can with those folks as well. But yeah, freedom of enterprise, it's an opportunity that somebody saw a space to get in here and provide a service that had fallen apart with the independent at one time. And
I
I
prefer
know
that we not talk about.
well, I'm not going to
different-
talk about, but that's the reason it came to
I
town.
understand, but I prefer tonight we not talk about what
All right.
what group
I'm
we like and don't like, or
Okay.
let's just stick to
Fair
the
enough.
motion.
So
Thank you.
can you just answer the question? Was this brought up at a council meeting and did we discuss about our interviews?
Do you have that information,
Or can you recall?
Mr. Hagman?
Just in the spring of 2020, I brought a report and it outlined all economic COVID-19 recovery opportunities, and this was outlined in that report. This opportunity was outlined in that report.
We did discuss it at a council meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Probably not in the detail, maybe.
I went too
that-
far,
that
but
maybe we
I
need to do,
detailed.
but- Councillor Tadman, go ahead.
Okay, the word that comes to mind, there was intent. There was nothing decided by council at that meeting. And certain members of the previous council felt that they were in a mushroom farm and kept out of what was going on. I opened my independent and found the magazine there. That was the first time I knew anything about it. And when people asked me about it at that time, I was embarrassed. And I thought, what is this? That was not a council decision as much as you'd like. Maybe people that sit on economic development, that committee, maybe they knew, but I didn't know. And I think some of the other members didn't know.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley and then.
The Beacon was there far before Economic Development Committee even met for the first time. I think some of us might have missed an email. I know we all had an invitation shortly after it was decided to, and I mean, decided by who? Council didn't decide. Council doesn't have a contract with this magazine, right? We were given an opportunity. We were given an invite if we wanted to be part of this. What they do with their advertising budget is we approve what economic development, what Ben does with his advertising budget. We don't tell him where not to advertise or where to advertise. So like I said, it's your budget, Ben. And if you want to advertise in the Beacon, or if you want to advertise in the Independent or any local magazine, go for it. That's your job. You don't need to justify that to me.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, thank you. And I remember that meeting. I was just waiting for the Mr. Hagerman to give the answer because I watched the audio of it. On the top of that, when it comes to the Beacon, the reason I brought this up and I wanted these questions because I've been approached, and I was approached, and I sent the email trying to get an answer, so I didn't have to come for a motion of council. Didn't get it, so I came. The other thing is that now the Beacon, unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's a great magazine, great publication, puts the stuff in, everything that goes in, and everybody's advertising. It is known as the gold standard. It represents the municipality. It's there now. It's hard to do. They won't advertise in anything else. If you want to advertise, you got to advertise in the Beacon because that's the one that the municipality is pushing. That is what I'm hearing on the street. So that causes a problem. Thank you.
You need to talk to DBI. They don't push anything. And as far as gold standard, aren't we lucky to have something that's gold standard that promotes the community?
Councillor Anderson.
Councillor LeBlanc, can you explain what you meant by they're told they have to advertise in that magazine? No one has to advertise in that magazine.
They're not told.
Who's they?
They prefer to go there because that's where everything goes.
Well-
There's no other magazine now.
Maybe they're recognizing their good return on their dollar.
Well,
that's
there's
all.
a number of really good local magazines. Let's be
That's-
honest. There's a number of them.
You go where the action is there. All right.
Advertisers are going to make that choice. We haven't made that choice for them either, for sure. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you. Can we just have a vote on this because this is going nowhere?
I understand. If everyone's ready and everyone said their piece.
And
then
we
will
didn't
have a
get
vote.
the answers really that we wanted, and I don't think we're going to. So can we just have the vote? We pretty well, I mean, it's pretty obvious how this is going to go.
What's that mean?
Councillor Bateman.
Sorry, I was in the middle thing. I still go back to what I said and I stand by it. It's a great magazine, there's no doubt. And I still think all of this could have been avoided with better communication, because I can guarantee you it wasn't discussed and talked about, you're going to go first or you're going to go second. And I know they did ask everybody, but that wasn't done in this format here, and whether it has to be or not, doesn't matter. Should have it been? Yeah, probably, because then we could have avoided all this. But I think we're dancing around in circles, because I don't think the issue is with the advertising solely, because I've heard comments, whether it be from whoever, and even out on the street, is it promoting certain individuals? Is it campaign literature? Is it this or is it that? A lot of it could have been avoided with better communication off the hop, to me, because I know it wasn't, I don't know what meeting it was discussed at, because when I first found out all the first interviews were done, I didn't even know. I thought when I first heard Beacon Magazine, it was something with the youth center up down. I had no idea it was something put together for the municipality. The only time I've seen it at a meeting was when it was discussed as a letter of intent, and then it never came back. It might have been done behind the scenes, but if we had done it more openly, I think all of this could have been avoided.
Thank you. And for the record, there are other local media news that do interview members of council randomly for whatever reason. It's not campaigning. It is their right to do that. But anyway, I think we're ready to for the vote.
One more thing. This debate needed to be had because of the stuff that's been going on and stuff I've been hearing. So now when I'm asked on the street or in a coffee shop or on Sobeys, I can say the council had a debate on this matter. It's done. It had to be brought to the floor. It's here now.
Thank you. All those in favor? Yes. You want to reread the motion? It's your motion. All those in favor of the motion? It's defeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Our next motion is with regard to short-term accommodations. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc. Thank you. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, whereas some members of council have noted concerns from residents of the municipality regarding short-term accommodations up to 800 unit allowances. And whereas some members of council have noted that these concerns from residents are based upon a lack of awareness of what is occurring in their own neighborhoods regarding short-term accommodations, therefore, it be requested that an amendment be made to the official plan amendment number 8 regarding short-term accommodations. The amendment would include a requirement that neighbors be notified of an application being made to run a business in their neighborhood, a stipulation that the rules and regulations of the business be disclosed to the neighbors, as well as recourse for the residents should there be an infringement, a process in which the neighboring properties have the opportunity to provide input regarding issues that may be unique to the application. These amendments would allow for residents to have a greater understanding and awareness of the happenings in their own neighborhood, which would contribute to a more positive experience for the businesses and residents alike. There would be less uncertainty and more transparency. Though this may be adding a layer to the process, it would contribute to a smoother integration of commercial operation in residential area. And further to discuss with council if there have been any cost considerations given to the increased policing requirements for short-term accommodation in the municipality, as there have been impacts to other municipalities regarding increased expenses. Councillor LeBlanc, I'll open the floor to you as you are the mover, but before I do that, I will note that at 8:06 p.m., Councillor Tadman returned to the chamber. 8:27 p.m., Councillor Tadman vacated the chamber. Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So on the short-term accommodation, the 800 units, so just a little bit of a story to it. When we went to the Good Roads, I called Mr. Walsh. I accidentally met with 6 other CAOs that are there in different municipalities, and they all have problems with short-term accommodations. 3 of them adopted ours and took 60 to 70% of what we wrote in our bylaw and adopted into theirs. And I've told Mr. Walsh that also and stuff. And I asked them, what didn't they take and what did they amend? They amended in 2 municipalities, the resident has to be in the short-term accommodation. The one on the by Long Point, them, their policing costs, they had 300, their policing costs went up by $700,000. In Northumberland County on Rice Lake, talking with the alderman, they have 30 units. Their policing costs has gone up by $128,000. So it also comes to some of the residents that when this passed, all they wanted to do is to have an awareness of what was going on. And when we said we adopted up to 800, but could be amended, they looked at me like I was crazy. How are you going to handle 800? Well, we went with 15% of 5,500 homes. And I've talked to this with Mr. Walsh and the stuff. So our bylaw to some people is 70%, 80% good, but it doesn't fit their municipality. Ours fits our municipality. And that's why we voted for it as a council. But one of the things is awareness, even with any business, anybody on any street should know what's going to open next to it. If we're going to keep it residential, they should know. That's what I brought this year. So.
Pardon me, Councillor Anderson.
Couple of points on this motion here. I'll just go to the bottom first and talk about policing. I remember bringing that up when we discussed the bylaws. I brought it up, not overly concerned, but I brought it up. That we didn't know what it would be like and what's it like now. You mentioned Rice Lake. You're 30 units on a all tourism related pretty well, I would think. And 128,000 barely covers the cost of one police officer OPP. So they've added a police officer, it sounds, for a portion of by the summer. When you mentioned 800 units, I remember also saying at that meeting that I was shocked at that 800 number, but it was a percentage, and we can review that later and that type of thing. So that's something that probably should be reviewed at where we find for our community is a happy number, if we can do that, So aside from that, they're all good questions, but I'll leave it for other people to speak about the residents having input. Okay. I'm sorry.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm a little concerned about the divisive language that some of these motions have when we refer to some members of council. I think that I guess personally don't appreciate it, but anyway, I don't think the wording of the short-term accommodation bylaw said 800 units. I think it was a percentage of units of a neighborhood. So not every neighborhood is going to have short-term accommodations. It's just not reality. So I don't think we're ever going to get up to 800 units. And that was explained to us. So I think we have to make sure we correctly represent, what the concern is, and perhaps that can be confirmed as well, that language. But when we talk about letting the neighbors know and talking about business, and I'm assuming that this just refers to short-term accommodation businesses. There are other people who have home offices and home businesses. So I'm just making sure that that language is clearly defined as well, as far as what the desire is of the mover.
So Director Walsh, I guess I get you to chime in on the specific percentage and what that means, please.
Sure, Mayor. The short-term accommodation bylaw or regulatory framework involves official plan policies. Secondly, a zoning bylaw amendment, and thirdly, a licensing bylaw. And within the zoning bylaw, there is a maximum density of 15% of dwelling units within that neighborhood. And there are three different characterized neighborhoods. One is rural areas, two, the hamlet areas, and thirdly, the urban areas. And the density is calculated based on a certain area measurement from a subject site. So yes, it's 15%. And we're currently standing at about 50 short-term accommodations. That fluctuates quite a bit, but on average, it's around 50. So I think we would be a long time before getting to around 800. And but council may recall also that staff committed to take a year administering the licensing bylaw, and report back at the end of that year, and to evaluate some of the issues that we experienced along the way. And I think maybe including some of the issues that have been raised in the notice of motion here.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Anderson?
I don't think we need to dwell on this tonight either, but 15% is 5% more than we asked for 10% on a new development for to add another accommodation to your residents. But anyhow, I look forward to this number being adjusted when the time comes.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, and the motion does read Airbnbs. So short-term accommodations, but if you look at the percentage and how the percentage done per street and how it could done and the 15%, and you look at it and you look at the map, aerial photo, you could hit between 8 and 1,200. But so that's there, not saying they were there, but to go back to we only have 50, when talking with the CAOs and talking with them at the table, one of them, they hire some type of company that looks and searches all the internet, they pay for it, we talked about this. They thought they had 60, they had 280 after they did the full search. And that's what they found with all of them that they were doing. So that's why when I was at the conference, Mr. Walsh, I called you up and complimented and everything. And what I was telling you about the CAOs that we had numerous conference calls, not conference call, but talk about the Airbnbs. And they searched me out because they did copy your bylaw. And I want to kudos you on that they did use some of it for their municipality that fits them, which is good. They're not on water there, but those are the costs. So, thank you.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Walsh, you're speaking about the licensing process. Is there a component in there as far as dealing with neighborhoods or notifying neighbors as to what goes on as we do with, I'm thinking like severance applications where we kind of circulate. I would hate to see all of the negative comments come out of those kind of neighborhoods, but is there a way to kind of balance maybe some of those concerns as in the licensing process? Do you have anything in there for that?
Director?
Mayor to Council, the licensing is not subject to public notice as if it were a minor variance or a consent. The licensing is really designed to manage at the operational level how that short-term accommodation can be orderly and safeguard offsite nuisances from occurring in large part, and that the operation of the short-term accommodation is also very of high standard, that they're providing some good host standards as they operate their business. So it's very much focused on health and safety and on good host standards, and lastly, nuisance management. Kind of like all some of those three components of the licensing bylaw. So the zoning bylaw is a more appropriate place to really deal with compatibility type questions. So the zoning bylaw restricted the scale at which a short-term accommodation may operate. And so staff feel that a lot of those offsite risks have been addressed through the zoning, and as a last safeguarded measure within the licensing provisions as well. So we'll begin to have a better sense of how people are accepting and adhering to these things as we move along. The licensing bylaw took effect there just last week, and the notice has been put in paper, and people are now going to our website, downloading the application form and guidelines. And so we'll begin to receive our first applications here shortly.
Follow up?
Yes, just some clarification, Mr. Walsh, as well as far as the licensing goes. So if there were concerns and complaints from certain neighborhoods, and I think this was part of a discussion before when we talked about this, licenses could be revoked then if there were concerns with, and would you have to pick just like the next door neighbor or whatever? Would there be an area once again there where if you had concerns from neighbors in an area where there is short-term accommodations, that licenses could be revoked after a warning or two?
Director?
Demerit, yes, there's a demerit point system within the licensing bylaw. So the bylaw enforcement officer will have the opportunity to assess a complaint, determine its validity, and then if valid, not frivolous and vexatious, as long as there's not other motives for laying the complaint, then that bylaw enforcement officer can either enforce immediately within the framework of the licensing bylaw, and within the same time, the basis of the license bylaw provides for some warnings for the issuance of demerit points. And then after the accumulation of a certain number of demerit points, a frequent offender will then risk having their license revoked. And that's all within the licensing bylaw. And I should fall back to the previous question where you asked about whether there's going to be public notification of the licensing applications. There is, I think, a provision in the licensing that, I noticed that we may publish those sites that have a license that have been issued, so that we might have them on our website and that people can be aware of what's licensed, what's not. And that might be a good thing for those wanting to promote their well-managed short-term accommodation. And it might also help the neighbors know what's where in their neighborhood if it's an issue for them.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman.
Thank you. Well, I think the intent behind Councillor LeBlanc's motion is to try to get out in front of the storm. And I know we're in the middle of identifying them. And when you talk short-term accommodations, there is 100%, there's tons of positives. We talked about that tonight. We're talking about a MAT tax and all the other stuff, and that can be utilized for great things. But with everything, there comes a bad side too. And the bad side is the more that are homes that are gobbled up with STAs, because every meeting and every level of government talks about shortage of homes. So I don't think we have to look too far. Look to the county. They've got 12 to 1,500. That's 12 to 1,500 that can't be bought for homes. So there's good to it and there's bad to it. I think we have to strike a delicate balance because there is a housing crisis. There is an SDA crisis. And I think we have to remember that. And I'd be willing, if Councillor LeBlanc is willing, it's his motion. I know the director is in the middle of identifying, because the first step is to identify the current STAs, and that's going to be a long process. So once we get the number of current STAs and then the number of STAs that will be approved, because just because they're current STAs does not mean they'll meet the criteria that's set out in the bylaw. So once we get that number, then maybe it can come back to council with a true number and we can try to find something, whoever's sitting around this table, the balance that we'd like to see in this municipality to have the accommodations we want, but also have a balance with the housing that we need.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. My understanding is that currently there are no new licenses being offered until that process is done. And I believe that the discussion that we had is that this would come back to council before that started to happen. So I think that's already been discussed and taken care of and understood, but I could get confirmation on that.
Director Walsh.
Mayor to Council, yes, good question, Deputy. There is a provision in the licensing bylaw saying no new whole home short-term accommodations are to be licensed until the beginning of 2023. So we have from now until the end of the year to identify the existing ones. So there is a major stay on any new STAs. And yes, this past week I've had to redirect one concerned purchaser.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc, you noted additional policing requirements for Rice Lake. Was that Hamilton Township? Your microphone.
It was Hamilton and Alderman. I talked to the councillors. And when we were working with Doctors Without Borders, they came to the meeting and we discussed it there.
Because I know both of those communities did pay for paid duty officers to govern their boat launches. And those officers did respond to some short-term accommodation issues, but the pay, the extra money paid, was for their boat launches. It wasn't to deal with short-term accommodation.
The way it was brought to my attention was
Yeah.
for the short-term accommodation.
I understand, but the actual money out was because they were their boat launches were being overwhelmed when they were supposed to be closed during COVID. So that's what those extra costs were. No doubt there are extra costs associated with short-term accommodations in a municipality. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Councillor LeBlanc, that was at the conference as well. They talked about mostly about bylaw officers and how they have to respond to these before the police are the last resort. And we discussed the bylaw officers, and we talked about extra bylaw in our budget for especially the high season in Brighton. So, so the policing issue was put aside more so for the bylaw enforcement.
And we did add money to our budget for an additional bylaw enforcement
additional,
officer. So
yep.
we can anticipate that coming fairly shortly, I would imagine, as we work our way through the year. I'm getting a head nod from the director, so that's good. Director Walsh, does any other business licensed municipally require public or neighborhood input?
Through the mayor, I'm not aware of any other municipal jurisdiction practicing giving notice of a license. I don't know there's basis for that in the municipal act where licensing finds its statutory basis.
Thank you. Anything further on the motion? All those in favor, go ahead.
Just, yeah, I think when you talk about that, you're more thinking about residential areas, right? Because I know if there's, well, I don't know, but I think in a previous council, when there was some kind of industry brought up into a rural area, there had to be a lot of notification given to neighbors and things. But that was an industrial kind of issue in a mostly residential type area, right? Or
because of a zoning change, though. That was a land use planning application.
right. Yeah. Okay. So which is still a little different. Okay. Forget I said that. Thank you.
Anything further for members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's defeated. Takes us to unfinished business, specifically the organizational review, RFP, CAO 2022 org review. We've already read and heard about the report at the last meeting. This was deferred to this meeting, so I will read the motion. Pardon me. Could we please ask Councillor Tadman if she'd like to return? Since her name's on the motion. Councillor Tadman has returned to chambers at 8:47 p.m. and just in time with a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contract with KPMG for the completion of an organizational review as outlined in Schedule 1 attached here 2, that funding for the completion of the subject contract be sourced through the contingency reserve. I believe it was the intent of some members of council to see if we could change the scope of all of this. And I know that Councillors Rowley and LeBlanc met with the CAO today. Councillor Rowley, do you have anything to add?
I'd like to first thank the CAO for meeting with us. We had a good discussion, so we can keep that transparent. It wasn't nothing secret, but we had a really good discussion. I thought so. With what I'm hoping is some good positive outcome as we move forward with this. So, Mayor, please direct me as how I could do this. Whether I would like to change the motion if I can. Can I do that? Can you tell me what I can
As
do?
it stands now, if you wanted a friendly amendment, you would have to make sure the mover, Councillor Tadman, and the seconder, Councillor Bateman, were okay with any amendments. Otherwise, we could defeat the motion and put a different motion on the floor that deals with this report.
And the discussion.
Or we could have the motion withdrawn and put a different motion on the floor as well. So perhaps provide your wording and see if the mover and seconder would be willing to make
Okay,
amendments.
so the wording that I have here, and you can stick it wherever you need to stick it. I mean, stick it wherever you need to stick it in the public record. I don't mean stick it.
No,
Maybe
I
will.
get it. I get it.
Okay. So my words are, with help here, that council directs staff to revise and narrow the scope of work for the RFP and negotiate with KPMG and report back to council at its earliest opportunities. So the intent of that is that probably the CAO will reach out to KPMG and relay some of the discussion that we had as to how to bring the scope of work as to what my initial objective was. And that hopefully before the end of the month, the CAO could bring back a report with how we can do that and then move forward on that. I know this, in some cases, people are going to be concerned that this is going to take more time. However, I don't think really time matters. We need to get this done. And however we get it done, if it's going to take an extra week or two, I don't care. I just want to see it done. And I want to be able to deal with some of the concerns that we discussed today.
Okay, so that is a very different motion from the one we're reading. So it's really not one we can amend. So we'd have to ask the mover and seconder if they'd be willing to withdraw the motion and put your motion on the floor as the mover.
Yes, I will agree to that because, I mean, I wanted to get it on the floor. That's why I signed it to begin with.
So as the mover, Councillor Tadman is withdrawing the motion. Councillor Bateman, do you agree to withdraw the motion and have Councillor Rowley put her motion on the floor?
I have no issues with that. The only question I have is, we're going to debate, if you go with the new motion, we don't know what was discussed, what's going to be changed.
We can ask those questions.
Okay.
When it
As
comes
long as
to
we
the
can,
floor.
because I don't know what direction, I'm just sitting here and I don't know what's happening.
Do you have the wording
What
in
I-
writing that you could provide to me?
Yeah. If you can read my handwriting.
Well, let's see. I will not rewrite it. I will simply attach it here too. I'll ignore the comments. So I will stick this where I want. That's right. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, and we'll need a seconder. The council directs staff to revise and narrow the scope of work for the RFP and negotiate with KPMG and report back to council at the earliest opportunity. Is there a seconder? Councillor LeBlanc. I think Councillor Bateman, you had a question.
So when we say reduce the scope, what are we talking, what are we reducing? What's the new scope? And because I'm not really, I know we've mentioned timelines and stuff, but to me, how long it takes is not near as important as if we're doing the right thing, because you're making an expensive decision one way or another. So I want to make the right decision. I don't care how quick it is.
Okay.
Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, if I can answer maybe some of that, and maybe the CAO can jump in as well, because we all took some notes, Councillor LeBlanc as well. So initially, the whole RFP that the CAO put together based on his understanding of what was requested. And it seemed to be all encompassing as far as a review goes. And we know that the CAO has been working on a whole organizational review. And so that's a job that he needs to finish up with. My concerns were more, as you know, as to why over the last several months we've been, staff have been leaving for whatever those concerns are. And we need to get to the bottom of that regardless, because that affects what the whole organization is, and as far as what our customer services is too, because the residents are the ones who lose at the end of the day. So basically we've got it down, or I think we have it down as the CEO, you might want to jump in here on this, that we're going to kind of hopefully look at maybe where we have some shortcomings and how we can fix those shortcomings. And I think dealing with these HR issues, dealing with a consulting firm brings a little bit more of a neutral and more of an unbiased eye to some of the concerns that might be out there. Is that kind of, does that kind of cover it?
CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you're bang on. You know, certainly the two council members and myself got together late this morning and we talked about a whole bunch of different issues and quickly realized that the comprehensive review was not something that we wanted. We wanted to narrow that scope a little bit, and we all made notes as best we could. And quite frankly, I'm looking forward to trying to synthesize those notes over the course of the next couple of days and in my head, try and get that scope narrowed and then go talk to KPMG to see if they're even interested in the job of a revised scope of work. But I think I got a good understanding with respect to Councillor LeBlanc and Councillor Rowley with respect to what they're looking for, and we'll proceed accordingly.
Councillor Bateman.
I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but that didn't clear it really a whole lot for me. When we say we're going to narrow the scope,
Right.
because the original motion said we're going to talk to all staff, and there's 100 and some staff, we're going to talk. So when we say we're going to narrow it, are we specifically, can we identify today specifically how we're going to narrow that, who we're taking out, who we're not?
Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, thank you. So
Are you, sorry, make sure you're answering that question.
yes, I am.
Thank you.
So when we looked at this, the crossing guards shouldn't be questions. The auxiliary firefighters, they're out. But also, like, I don't want to go too far because I was in a meeting and we said what happened in the meeting would stay in that meeting. And I'm going to be honest to the CEO, I'm going to be my integrity to Mrs. Tadman. We cleared the air. Might be feelings hurt, might be my feelings hurt, but it was put right on the table and it was put fair and square what it was. But certain things, and then when we looked at the overall thing, the CAO said they did a review in Coburg, and I brought that review here. But the review in Coburg, this is Brighton. This is not what we were looking for. This is not all of it. Most of it is 90% of it is all there. But it's just to do on some certain things, that we don't really need to know, right? They're working well. So why go back and up that road and if he's already doing a review with him? And when you say you're still going to talk to all the employees, staff, other than crossing guards and the auxiliary firefighters, but all the council, we're all going to be there.
Please remember that the CEO will bring a report back that we can discuss this, right? So there's still opportunity. Like I said, we can still customize this as we're moving forward with the CAO.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So it's clear that a few people have a good understanding, but not all of us. We're still talking about just reducing the scope, but we don't have a point-by-point idea of what we're changing. And by the sounds of it, a few people got together and had a meeting that they don't want to talk about, and we're agreeing to allow them to direct the CAO as to how we're going to reword this. So I just need a little bit more information. I need a little bit more.
Just to be clear, the CAO isn't going to be directed unless we pass this motion.
I understand that, and that's why I'm saying, if we pass this motion, that's what we're doing. So we need to have some point form. This is the scope that's changed. This is what we're going to do different. If anyone can provide me with that, I would appreciate it.
First to say, this was not a secret meeting. So, well, you know what, we don't always have perfect explanations for everything. There was nothing secret about this meeting. It was a very open, very candid conversation regarding what the concerns are that this council had when we talked about it the last time. So the concerns are maybe for some of us, there we go with the some of us, I get it, still the same.
At the end of the day, the majority of council voted in favor, so we can say council.
Okay, so
Even
we
if-
can say.
even if a few of us didn't agree, carry on.
Correct. Okay, thank you for that. So there are concerns as far as maybe where some folks, some employees have left. Some of us have those concerns. The majority of council obviously voted to kind of maybe investigate some of those concerns. So the CAO has done exit interviews. He has some HR information, which none of us are privy to at this stage. Hopefully, with the support of this HR review, we will get a report from them when this is all over that shows maybe a few more, have some more neutral eyes look at some of the concerns and maybe kind of figure out where maybe some of our shortcomings are. This isn't about changing the org review. That is still up to this CAO to finish. This is just to audit exactly where maybe some of our shortcomings, where some of the concerns are with some staff. That's all we're looking for at this stage.
Deputy Mayor.
Again, so just so I'm clear, so how the scope has changed is that you've narrowed it down to just really interviewing to find out why people have left. Is that where you're changing the scope to find out why so many people have left? Is that?
That's certainly part of it, right?
I'm just trying to get a handle how the scope has changed.
That's what we're doing. We're shrinking it down based on the,
I wonder if the CAO has some words.
yeah,
around
he might
this.
be better with this.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. And as I mentioned, we had a great meeting at 11:30 this morning. Have we a definitive list for you this evening? No. Certainly since our meeting at 11:30, I've been directed elsewhere onto 14 other things this afternoon. So the intention is to try and consolidate our thoughts and our discussions, come up with a revised scope of work, and in due course, get it back to council to have full understanding with respect to, we started here and now we're here, so that you understand. And secondly, we've got to talk to this consultant to see if they're even interested. They may not. They may be interested in this and have no interest in this. I don't know. Have to have those discussions.
If council passes this motion, CAO, will your report include what the new scope of work is
Sure.
for council? Will it
Sure.
detail that out for
Sure.
us?
Point by point.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
You just asked my question.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome. Councillor Tadman.
So really, why we keep going around the table talking about the same thing when we have to wait to see what the CAO is bringing forward?
Because until just now, we didn't know that.
Well,
That's
we
why.
heard it about a half an
Councillor
hour
LeBlanc.
ago.
And to be frank, to CAO, do you agree with the meeting we had today that was very frank and honest? That's right.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor Bateman.
Just so I can wrap my head around, so tonight, all we're gonna do is vote on a motion for the CAO to contact the firm to see if they're interested in doing a reduced version of something, and then that will come back to us whether they're willing and with a new price, if they're willing to adjust the price, and then we'll be voting on that.
Correct.
Okay.
Councillor Rowley. Gotcha.
Which is exactly, I mean, you say you don't, we will have a better, once the CAO looks at the notes, puts them together, everyone will have an opportunity to realize where this is going to go at some point.
Councillor Bateman.
I just wanted to be clear, because we're voting and the votes don't cost us anything, but we're voting taxpayers' dollars. So I want to know, if we're reducing something and paying the same price, then why reduce it? And you really want to make sure that the scope of work, we keep saying, is going to capture everything you need, but I don't think we can direct the firm that we're hiring to ask this specific question, because that's really leading them to a predetermined path. Once we give them, they're going to ask what they want, not what we tell them to.
Certainly that will be included in the report with regard to the scope of work, so we'll be able to determine if that's the intent. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So we have decided already, we've taken the other motion off the floor, so we're not actually agreeing to the current organizational review. And so we're going to hear back on this. So we're not actually agreeing to spend any money tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
Councillor Tadman.
And because it says in here, it's an organizational review, it definitely isn't, so it shouldn't be in the motion.
It is not in the new one, and I will reread it for everybody's benefit before we vote on it. My question is procedural in nature, CAO, and that is we have an outstanding bid. I do not want this municipality to be stuck with a $110,000 bill because we haven't dealt with that bid. We have taken the motion off the floor to accept that contract. Is there anything we need to do to, maybe we can wait, I don't know, but is there anything we need to do to make sure that the bidders understand that we are not going down that road? And maybe tonight's not the night to do that. We may want to go down that road at some point. So we've removed that motion from the floor. We can still bring it back procedurally, but I'll leave the question out there for you.
Okay. Through you. Great question. Certainly until this morning, wasn't sure where we're going, or this evening, wasn't sure where we're going. Obviously, from a risk management standpoint, I always get legal advice with respect to the steps, particularly as they relate to contractual matters and RFP matters. So rest assured, I'll protect the interests of the municipality on a go-forward basis.
Thank you. And you'll report back any advice we receive with regard to that, please. Thank you. So it is moved by Councillor Rowley and seconded by Councillor LeBlanc that council directs staff to revise and narrow the scope of work for the RFP and negotiate with KPMG and report back to council at the earliest opportunity. I'm wondering if we should be specific about KPMG, because if KPMG says not interested, my bet would be that the CAO would want to go to the next bidder and see if they had any interest.
That works with me. I was taking advice earlier from the CAO, so if you want to change that, that's stick it where you need.
How best to word that, CAO? KPMG is the current bidder we're talking about, so KPMG or an alternate bidder?
I think we all know through you, Mr. Mayor, we all know that we had two bids. And we had an evaluation committee that said out of the two bids, this is the preferred bid. So we go back to the preferred bidder and say, do you want to work with us? And they may choose not to. So naturally, I would go to the next guy or next group or next bidder. So it could be alternate and try and negotiate with them. And I'm unsuccessful in negotiating with either one of them, we're going to kick it out and do something different.
So mover and seconder, I've written or the alternate bidder and report back to council. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Bateman?
Just for the CAO, the preferred bid that was accepted, were they accepted based on how their bid looked based on the scope, and will that change once it's lowered? Because I don't know what criteria you use and what elevated them above the other.
Well, we had a comprehensive RFP, as you know, and we outlined the scoring matrix and how we were going to evaluate the bid. You know, we outlined what the criteria were and how it was weighted, and had 4, 5, 6 different staff members take a look. And certainly the consensus was to go with the one firm. So I don't think that at the end of the day, our evaluation committee still feel that a review of this nature should go to this particular proponent. Out of the two, that's what the evaluation team came up with.
As a follow-up?
Yeah, just to follow, I would more lean towards, so let's say they don't want to accept a reduced scope. Are you confident in the second bidder because they didn't? Great, that's what I'm getting at. If KPMG doesn't want it, are you confident in the other being qualified to do it?
CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly out of the two bidders, the preference was to deal with KPMG. Are they two professional firms that have varied experiences? Yes, they do. So certainly with the revised scope of work, I would go to the second proponent and try and understand whether they're even interested in doing that revised scope of work, and or whether they had any experience in performing it. So we've got to define what the revised scope of work is firstly, and then go through proponent number 1 and proponent number 2 and see what the results are at the end of the day.
And if neither of the two bidders wish to provide us with a quote, you'd come back to council with that information and get further direction, I assume. Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
It's just that I've heard two terms of this so far. It's not an organizational review. It's a review. Is it an audit? Or is it an organization?
I think we'll have a better sense of what the scope of work is when the CAO reports back to council. And I think we've been awfully hung up on word titles, terms, rather than actually the meat and potatoes of what we intend here.
So if I don't have to worry about it until that meeting, that'd be great. Well, I'm concerned about it because I think we all are. I'm not taking anything away from anybody. So the fact that if we can come clean with some good answers and everybody can deal with it, I'm interested in where do we go from there, and how do we deal with the future of our HR for this municipality.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to bylaws, pardon me. The first bylaw is with regard to the agreement with BN Construction Limited, reconstruction of Addison and Napoleon Streets. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and BN Construction Limited for the reconstruction of Addison Street and Napoleon Street. Is there any discussion? Councillor Tadman.
Just the fact that this has been on the books for about 4 years, so.
About time. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next bylaw is tax rate bylaw 2022 with a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to provide for the adoption of tax rates for 2022 and to further provide for penalty and interest in default of payment thereof. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Takes us to reports of advisory committees of council, reports and minutes, and council reports. The only is from the Brighton Digital Archives Committee, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Connect. The council received the February 22nd, 2022 Brighton Digital Archives Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no reports, minutes of statutory committees, boards, or external agencies, which brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. And the only piece of correspondence comes from Candy Keeler, Community Engagement Specialist, Operation Smile Canada, with a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council support or receive the request to proclaim June 19th, 2022, the longest day of smiles. Councillor Rowley, this is your motion. Thank you.
All right, support.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc, you're in agreement?
Yes,
Thank
support.
you. Is there any discussion from members of council? All those in favor? Oh, you're voting. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Pardon?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
now. As far as correspondence, is this where we would put the request from the OPP?
From the Rebound?
Yeah.
From the Rebound group? I'm going to talk to the clerk about how best to get that forward without going through the notice of motion process, because we want to do it before the 28th of May. So I will have a conversation with the clerk before the end of the week about how best to get that done. Okay. And we do need to wait. So we'll get that information from the Director of Finance about how much is in that Youth Initiative Fund. And we'll see procedurally how we can move that item forward. Okay. What's that? Yeah, it's like a sauna in these council chambers. It's ridiculous. We've got things in the works apparently. Which brings us to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes the Loomis Bridge update from Northumberland County, the Northumberland County update, April 25 to May 6, and the Northumberland County Spongy Moth update. Oh, I've got 3 different motions. Oh, there's the consent agenda. Is there any of these 3 items which members of council wish to be brought out and debated separately? Deputy Mayor.
I just have a question for our staff regarding spongy moth. Can I ask that?
You can ask it when I read the motion, the
Yes.
omnibus motion for sure. Unless
But I
you
don't
want
need to separate it out.
unless you want it debated separately.
I don't really want to debate. I just have a question.
Okay, yeah, so you can ask that question when I read the larger motion. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Be it resolved, the staff recommendations with respect to items 16.1 to 16.3 be adopted as printed, and Councillor Anderson and Councillor Bateman, I changed that to, it used to say 16.1 and 16.2. It now says 16.1 to 16.3 to include all three things in the consent agenda. Are you okay with that? Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if staff can answer. It's just a question at this point, because last year we saw the spongy moth. It was pretty much up to the 401, but it didn't make its way over yet. This year it may. I'm obviously this is a concern for residents. It's also a concern for our own municipal properties. Do we have any plan in place, to protect our municipal properties?
CAO.
The quick answer, Mr. Mayor, is no, I don't have anything in mind. We've been trying to follow the lead of the county with respect to their direction, and we now have an idea of where they're going, and likely will follow their lead, given the expertise that they have in this particular area.
Thank you. And just if there's any advice we can offer to residents, because it's quite devastating for those who sit in their house and then they can hear munching outside. And so if there's anything that we come up with that we can offer to our residents and put it out there, I think it would be greatly appreciated.
So from a communications perspective, and I looked to Mr. Hagerman, the City of London put out a video about how to deal with spongy moth larvae, spongy moth eggs. It's actually about a 10, 12-minute video, very plain language and some good advice. So I would recommend that maybe we take a look at that and share those details with our community. Councillor Anderson.
I came across something today that they are laying their eggs now, and this is the time to get them. So don't hesitate. And if you follow that direction that the mayor was talking about, I think you'll find ways that you can deal with the small amount right now, but don't let it grow.
Anything further on the consent agenda?
Perhaps
Deputy
we can
Mayor?
have a get them and stick them campaign.
Yeah. Like picking up garbage.
I hear you. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. That brings us to question period. Is there anyone in the public gallery or on Zoom who has a question with regard to tonight's agenda? Oh, well, did it come to you? Would you let Mr. Green know that I will make sure Mr. Dees gets that question, and I will get it back to him or through the director or through me. I will do that tomorrow morning. And there being no questions from the gallery, thank you. We will take a 10-minute recess and then resume for our in-camera session at 9:30